was heated by oil up until last fall. We had a catastrophic boiler failure. We had planned to replace the boiler in 2021 after the moratorium was over. But we were forced sort of to make a choice and either replace it with an oil-fired boiler or natural gas or gas. And we went with gas and have been heating it up with propane since over the past year. So requesting to put a new service in, make a road cut, and convert the propane over to natural gas. It would achieve about a $5,000 savings to the academy annually. Also, we get rid of 1,000 pounds of or 1,000 gallons of propane that are on campus right now that we, both for safety and aesthetic purposes, would love to get rid of. And we have National Grid also running a new service to the Frost building just down the street. So it's good timing while they're on campus to do that.
One of the questions I had is, in the past we've had National Grid do a lot of directional drilling, and we generally don't grant these road cuts, and so I wasn't sure if you'd looked into that, how much that would cost, and why that isn't the way you're going, because that's generally what we ask people to do in these situations. We have a couple on Orchard Street that are directionally drilling to get their water across because they can't do the cuts.
Okay, I can certainly, I had not looked into that, and I could.
And before you go a little bit further, can Damon, maybe yourself or Doug or Tracy, can you redefine how the moratorium and how much longer we have left? Is it a 5-year moratorium on the road cuts?
Yep.
Do we know how much longer?
2021, wasn't it?
2021, I believe. Yeah, I believe it's 5 year and the road was redone
So-
in 2016.
21 is when it is over.
That's my understanding.
And then that makes it relevant with Damon was saying for the rest of the year. It's done a lot for water for sure.
I know National Grid's done it for gas in the past, so I guess my feeling is that I'm hesitant to grant it to governors, even though we have a great working relationship, because I feel like it's unfair to the residents who don't have this same sort of capital. And you know, if we start granting them to one group, I think we have to grant them for all. And if we're going to make an exception, we need more of a reason, to my mind.
It's tough because the academy's really good to the town, where we've had similar requests.
And deny them.
When the roads used to be all busted up and junk, it was easier.
Well, certainly understanding what the cost of directional drilling is will be more information for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, because you shouldn't. Is this boiler heat and hot water? Or is this okay? So cold showers and Perkins for the time being.
No, it's fired up propane
No,
right now, so
propane.
we have a heat source. It's just opportunity while National Grid's here to get them to do two things at once, and would achieve some savings annually to do it.
Yes.
Run them off of natural gas.
I mean, you might find out that there's some reason in that location you can't do it, there could be rocks or something, and that's gonna add to the argument for, you know.
The road cut.
road cut. Yep.
Yeah, I don't.
I'd like you to take a look and see if you can do the directional drilling.
Sure, certainly can do that, and if not, we'll come back. Would you like me to come back if that's not an option, or is it just a?
Well, I'd like to.
denial?
I can't speak for the whole board. I'd like to know what that option looks like, and whether or not it's viable. If it's viable, clearly you don't need anything from us.
Sure.
And yeah, I don't know what the rest of the board feels like.
Yeah, and again, it's tough because the
Yeah,
governors
I
are so
agree
good
with
to
you.
the town.
So we can't make an exception for one, it will open up the doors for many problems. So I think try to find the other way, and if you can't, then maybe
Yeah,
come back.
if you can't and you're really stuck,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we can have another conversation, but
Yeah, I think
I'm hesitant.
we just have to set the parameters under which we would grant exceptions.
Exactly, okay.
Yeah, I mean, would you just, last note, if directional drilling were not an option, would you be willing to consider some sort of a, commitment on behalf of the school to repair the road in kind, and if any settling or heating occurred, we do the repair?
I mean, I think that would be part of that
Anyway.
discussion.
Anyway.
That would have been it anyway.
Because because I think it's incumbent on anyone who does a road cut to do that
Mhm.
to begin with, and then I think the question that I have is, if we were ever to override the moratorium, under what conditions would we do that? For what reasons, and what would town expect in return for making the exception? And I think that's a discussion we could have at a future meeting. I'd wanna talk to James about it first, but I don't think I'm qualified right now to have that discussion, because I haven't done much research on it.
I want his input.
Perfectly fair. Yep. Sure.
Okay.
I will do some research and get back to you.
Fingers crossed you can do it.
Hopefully, yes, okay.
We don't have to see you again.
No offense.
No offense.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, you too.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I'm gonna recuse myself from that one, just give me a second to step away.
The next thing on our agenda is the request for public property use special permit, Essex County Greenbelt Association, 5th annual tour, the Greenbelt Cycling Event with water stop at the Lower Green, Saturday, September 21st, 2019, from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Okay.
Second.
Is there someone here to talk about the event? Come on up.
Oh, great, okay. Wasn't prepared to talk, but I can answer any questions. I have a map of where we'll be. I think it's the same as it's been in the past. Looks like it's gonna be, the ride will be coming in on 1A and a left turn on Newman Road. And I believe my colleague Jane has been working to get, an ambulance there. I think there will be someone there. I think that was requested. So that's in the works. And that's been requested by Greenbelt, so should be set with that as well.
And this is a general fundraiser for the Greenbelt?
Yeah.
Or
Yep, we do it every year. Pardon me?
It's your 5th year, it's,
I think this is actually our third annual. Maybe it's fourth.
No, that's good.
That's just
Is
fifth.
that fifth?
Yeah.
Oh, then it's-
time flies when having fun.
I guess. I've been with Greenbelt for 3 going on 4 years, and this is only my third, so.
How many riders do you expect?
Last year we had about 200 riders, but not everyone goes the long route, so, it's tough to say how many people will be going through, but last year we had 200 riders, and I would say, a little less than half did the longest route, so.
And what is the cutoff for sign up? If people see this and decide they wanna do a charity ride?
Yeah, I think you can actually do day of registration as well, so, most people will sign up beforehand, but, some folks come day of.
And so they can go on your website for more info?
They can, yes, ncga.org.
You're not gonna have any, what's your signage gonna be like? You're gonna have signs on the.
It's always very well marked. My colleagues go out and mark the course, the day, 2 days before, and then kind of go back through. We've had problems in the past with people taking signs down, and then it gets a little tricky, but, it's pretty well marked, and I know there are a couple other races that tend to go on similar times, so we try to distinguish ours.
So your signs are gonna be on the side of the road, you're not gonna be marking the road as well?
No, we won't be marking the road.
Thank you.
Alan, everything okay?
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So for our latest
Lance,
No.
sorry, we have a public hearing.
Six o'clock is. Okay, we have 3 minutes.
All right, we don't have time for that, so just. Huh?
Yeah.
What's it? Yeah, we can do that one, I think, sure. No, this is because I'm working off of two, an updated and a less updated agenda. Can I just use your? Okay, we have a request for public property use / special permits, neurofibromatosis Northeast 9th Annual Coast to the Cure Bike Ride through Newbury on Hanover, Green, Hay, and Low Streets and High Road and Route 1A, Saturday, September 14th, 2019, from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Motion to approve?
Second.
anyone here to discuss this one?
Good evening, my name is Mike Flynn, I'm on the committee for the Neurofibromatous Coast of the Shore organizing the event. As you said, I think you have most of the notes, we expect about 50 riders coming through your space. We don't have any stops planned along the way. Any of our markings are reusable plastic signs, they planned about 24 hours in advance on the side of the road. We collect them within 24 hours and we're done.
Fantastic. And how long have you guys been doing this? And
This is our
ninth?
annual.
And this is, what is, for those of us who don't know, what is neurofibromatosis?
Neurofibromatosis is a genetic disease. Quickest answer is it's the type of tumors that form on skin and nerve cells.
And so if people wanted to, join you and what's the latest you could sign up?
Sign up, they're welcome to. You can get more information from our website. NFNortheast.org.
Great.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, have a
Thank
great
you very
ride.
much.
Good luck.
All right, it's gonna be close enough to 7:15. In accordance with the provisions of Chapter 138, Section 15A of the General Laws of Massachusetts, as amended, the Board of Selectmen as licensing authority will hold a public hearing on the application of Saintly Cider LLC for a Farmer Series pouring permit alcohol license to be exercised at 41R Parker Street, Newbury.
Motion to open the public hearing?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And do you want to read the public hearing notice? Yep. The Town of Newbury, Board of Selectmen Licensing Authority Notice of Hearing. Notice is hereby given in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 138, Section 15A of the General Laws of Massachusetts as amended, that Saintly Cider LLC has applied for a Farmers Series pouring permit alcohol license to be exercised at 41R Parker Street, Newbury, Mass. 01951. Board of Selectmen as licensing authority will hold a public hearing on said application on Tuesday, July 23rd, 2019 at 7:15 p.m. at 12 Kent Way, Byfield, Mass. 01922, at which time all interested parties will be heard. Town of Newbury is the Board of Selectmen License Authority. This is under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 15A and Section 16C. Any school, church, or hospital within 500 feet of 41R Parker Street, Newbury, Mass. 01951, wishing to object to the issuance of such a license must voice objections in writing to the Board of Selectmen, 12 Kent Way, Suite 101, Byfield, Mass. 01922. And this was published once in the Newburyport Daily News on Tuesday, July 9th, 2019.
I move to approve the license.
Second.
Okay, this activity, before we vote, is it agricultural or are you a commercial enterprise?
Well, we're using agricultural, we're using Mass apples from a farm in Mass. We use some local apples as well. And it's just gonna be a tasting room so people can come get a flight and get a growler fill up. And so it's just gonna be really limited, really small kind of thing, so.
Okay,
But we do commercial, like we produce commercial hard cider if it's a farmer winery license. so
take it
it's-
away, pal.
So,
I'm gonna recuse myself from this one.
Okay, just to clarify again for people who don't know, the difference between a pouring license and a tasting license is that you can only pour how much?
So technically with my license, I can sell sealed products. With my farmer winery license I already have, but a pouring permit allows me to do a growler fill up. Like, so if you wanna get a growler fill up of whatever type of cider, I can fill it for you and you can take it with you.
Mhm.
And I can charge for a flight of cider if you wanna try like 4 or 5 different types of ciders,
And
under 3
that's
ounces.
under 3 ounces, so I think that's the important
Yeah,
clarification.
no, it's
You're
not- it's
pouring
gonna be
pints,
quick.
it's not a bar room
No.
setting that you're creating there.
No, like there'll be, if people wanna like sit outside and drink their flight, they can, but it's gonna be like one picnic table, super basic. There isn't much parking, I think there's parking for like 5 or 6 cars, so it's gonna be like quick, I want people in and out fast.
Caleb, what's the flight?
A flight is, it's like, a flight, so it's like 4 or 5 different samples you can have, you can try everything we have, and then try it. If you like it, hopefully you buy it, bring it home. So.
Are there any seats inside?
What was that?
Are there any seats inside?
No, it's only it's almost like it's like 36 square feet.
Oh, okay.
On the inside, and there's a little bit of outside area where we're gonna have like a picnic table.
Okay.
First.
And what are your hours of operations?
Is requested Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Sunday, 12 to 7.
Is there anything you want to tell the general public while you're on camera about the business?
Well, we're hopefully, once we get the state, so this goes to the state next, so hopefully by mid-August, we'll be open. To start, we're only gonna be really like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, honestly, is what we're gonna do to start.
start with.
We're like, I'm a one-man show, my wife helps me as well, so we wanna keep it super basic and see how it goes, so. And bring an awesome business to Newberry, so we're excited.
And exactly, give us a good where are you exactly?
You know where, if you take a right at Kelly Tree Valley and the Enterprise, across the street from the rail trail entrance is the entrance to tender crops, like growing fields where they have their greenhouses and stuff like that. There's a red barn right down dirt road. It's right there. It's 41R Parker Street. So, yeah, we're
And
excited.
so if I understand this correctly, you're only gonna be serving flights.
Yep.
And
Slices
then
right
if you
across
wanna,
those.
if you wanna buy the product, you need to bring your own growler in?
No, you have to. We sell you a growler. You can fill it up and you can bring it back. It's like reusable.
Okay, so you bring, so if you buy one.
Yep.
You recycle the growlers with you, or
Yeah,
you
yeah,
bring
you
your
bring-
own growler every time?
So
you
technically, you
fill
have
it?
to like. I can't fill a growler like if you got from like say Riverwalk or whatever. It has to be one that I sold to you
Okay,
with my product because it has like certain information on it and stuff like that on the growler. So pretty much just recycle, bring it back, I give you another one. You know,
Okay.
kind of thing. But once you own one, you own it. You know what I mean? So.
The neighbors, any input from any of the neighbors?
No, Gene was really excited. So.
Okay, come on down. All right, good.
I'm here, I'm a neighbor.
Okay,
I'm an abutter.
okay. So, no problem.
I have questions.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I'm not opposed to it. Oh, do I?
Yeah, please, why don't you come on up and, Caleb, don't go too far away.
Yeah.
You may be able to answer the questions. Please state your name and where you live.
Yeah,
I know
kind
you're
of
a
tell
butter.
us where you are spatially.
Okay, so I'm Kathy Murray, I live at 46 Parker Street. So I'm across the street and I'm the first house after the rail trail.
Okay.
So there's the rail trail, there's property, and then our house is set back. So this is where Dancing Goat
Correct.
used to be.
Yeah.
So my questions are, so you mentioned that people can have flights and they're 3 ounces each, and you said that they could have up to 4 to 5 flights.
No, 4 to 5 sample it. So a flight is like 4 to 5. So that would limit like 4.
And
so
how
4
much total
samples.
ounces is,
So 12 ounces. Well, 3 times 4 is 12. So
right, and how many of those could somebody have?
One. So I don't want it. I want to be. I want to be like super basic and not.
Yeah,
I don't
so
want
how
to
is
be-
that controlled then?
So whoever is working, who's most likely going to be me and my wife, are tip certified, serve safe certified, choke safe certified, and we just make sure that people don't get more than a flight, which is 4 to 5 samples, but we're going to keep it to 4 to start. See how it goes.
So I'm just curious as to how this works in terms of it's not a bar, it's not a liquor license, but yet there's an individual who's not a bartender or has a liquor license who's potentially gonna be the one controlling how much alcohol is consumed at the location, based on the individual that's working.
So legally, this is a type of liquor license,
Okay,
but it very specifically limits the amount that can be served, and that's part of why I brought up how big the
right,
the
that's
flights
right.
are. So it sounds like your standard flight is about a beer worth, and his intention is not to serve more than 1 flight to 1 customer. With any liquor license, if there's an abuse of it, we can pull the license.
So the town would have the ability to pull the license, or does
Yeah,
that have
so-
to be then the state or?
No, we're the issuing authority, so we can remove the license. The state could also remove the license if there was a violation. But that's how it would work. So, it's a perfectly valid concern.
Not that I don't think you would do the
Yeah.
right thing, but I know
I
when
understand.
things aren't black and white, there's a lot of gray in the world,
for
so.
sure. Yeah.
My other concerns are relative to, you said, a small operation and keep it that way, but, if this is granted, if for example, you wanted to have a big party and have a band and have 100 people come and have a tasting or a pouring, what kind of controls are in place that once this license is granted, is that something that could happen, can happen,
So
maybe,
to do
what's the
something
definition
like
of
that
small?
would require a special permit
Like one day
applications,
license,
a one-day liquor license.
Yeah.
So that would be entirely separate. This would not give him the ability to do what you just described.
But this would give him the ability to then go before you and try and get approvals for.
Anyone can
Anyone.
ask for a special permit. I mean, the
Regardless
most
of
common
wedding.
one is for weddings. So anytime you wanna serve alcohol at a wedding, we grant a special permit to allow you to serve alcohol at the weddings.
My other concern is really relative to the parking, because I know that you mentioned that there's 5 spots, and I'm obviously very familiar with the location. I do know that there's the dirt road and there's some parking, but that being said, if in fact it was more people was showing up, it then becomes the issue is where the cars park. And right now, there are 3 designated parking spots for the rail trail, and that is abused on a daily basis. As I was driving here today, someone was parked in the spot that says no parking here, and usually every day, someone is parked in the spots that say no parking here. The other issue is if people start parking on the side of the road, on either side of the road, given the fact that the rail trail is there, and now this, my concern really, the biggest concern I have is relative to the parking and how it's already abused, with the rail trail, and that's the issue that I have too.
Alright.
And you can't control that,
No.
obviously.
But, and the tasting, honestly, unless, like I said, the tasting room is literally smaller than that table right there, like the standing.
Yeah,
So-
I've been
yeah,
in
so maybe like
the,
3
I
people.
bought cheese in there, so
Yeah.
I know how
So that's
small
really
it
what
is.
So it's not, I mean, I don't intend it to be anything crazy, like, I
But
don't
if your
want to,
business is really
I
successful
mean, that'd be awesome, probably.
and people are walking down that rail trail and see
Yeah.
that there's a tasting room here, you know, we
Well,
can
then
never say
they're not
never.
driving right there, though.
They're not driving. Hopefully they're not driving. So I'm just, you know, these are what I think are legitimate concerns. The other thing that's also somewhat relative to this and relative to the rail trail is, I know Newburyport had, when the rail trail was built, Newburyport has a, dawn to dusk regulation on the books for people on the rail trail. I don't believe our town does have that, and I had asked when the rail trail was first created if that was something that could be put into place, and I don't believe it is. And I think that would be somewhat helpful as well, because if there is no regulation as to when people can be on the trail, and there is noise or disruption or whatever, and I was to call, my house being the closest house to the trail, really, what could the police do? There's no law that says somebody can't be there. So I'm kind of using this almost as a bridge to the fact that I think that would be helpful to have that in place so that there is some type of control if things aren't in control. So that was something else that I would like to see kind of piggybacked on this, is that we do implement, if it's not, that we do implement some type of dawn to dusk on the trail regulation, which I believe would be consistent with what Newburyport does have.
Would that be something that'd have to be adopted at town meeting?
And this is really nothing to do with
Martha has a lot of, there was a lot of conversation when that rail trail opened, or was in the formative parts, about how to park cars. I mean, we had a lot
I
of
remember that,
conversation.
Yes,
So,
and it was decided that 3 was sufficient, but, and, which is fine, but there's,
and 3 was what we had for limitations of space.
right, but people are parking, I mean, literally parking under the sign that says no parking here, every day. And I don't know how often the police patrol it, I don't know if anyone's ever gotten a ticket. I don't know if.
I happen to know someone who might be able to answer that question.
Gentlemen back.
Hi, as you were speaking, I was asking my supervisors to put on a patrol advisory, parking enforcement at that location. I didn't realize it was a problem.
Every day.
Yep, we'll be watching.
All right,
So-
thank you.
And I can't tell you how many tickets have been issued there because I have no idea.
I don't think any.
I don't think any.
Yeah.
Susan's the parking clerk, so she would know.
I mean, and has anybody besides me seen this? I mean, maybe it's only
I've seen it.
something I noticed because I live there. And I'm not trying to deter people from using the trail, but it's just amazing to me that people park under a sign that says no parking. I just couldn't do it. So.
I understand.
So I have a question about the license. Now, if, this is a pouring license, but you're not gonna have any entertainment there, right? Like,
No.
no music playing?
No, like, if anything, have like a radio being inside the space, like playing some hipster music. You know?
Yep.
So,
But nothing outside
no.
You need a special permit for that,
for the entertainment, right?
for outside.
1 day license or whatever.
So really, what my biggest concern comes to the fact that if it gets popular, which I hope for your business it does, I mean, business is good, that what happens then to the issue with the parking that's already being abused? And my only other concern would be, noise control. Again, if people are having a great time and then go on the rail trail and it's now later in the evening, that's disruptive to my privacy, so.
Well, he's
That's-
closing at 7 p.m.
And that's my other question, would that always be the case, or is?
That's what I'm asking. I don't want to be open past. I don't want to be a bar. I want it to be a place you come quick and leave. I don't want to be a hangout. I don't want to be a bar. They can go to any other place.
But if, once this is permitted, or once this is approved, I guess, and the license is done, if 2 or 3 years from now, your wife has a different opinion and says, let's do nighttime, can that be changed because
They'd have to reapply.
reapply?
So
If it gets
come
that
before.
Sounds like you have to grow big time too, it's like, it's a bit small of a place. I mean, you bring
You
up.
can never say never.
You're bringing up good points, really.
I've
You're bringing
had
up-
some issues.
I think you're bringing up good points.
No, and if I lived there, I would have the same.
Yeah.
I was very, we were very pro rail trail, and I
Yeah.
still am. And I haven't had problems with, any issues other than a few stray dogs and,
You just said something, I walk my dog early, I'm on that trail at 4 in the morning sometimes, and I guess I can't be on it now. I didn't
Well,
realize
no,
that.
well,
The
the
dog
law
does.
doesn't exist right
No,
now.
but the
No,
Newburyport, I wanted a Newburyport.
And look, my feeling is that nothing's going on, and you're just walking your dog, nothing's wrong. But if, like I said, it's 10 o'clock at night, I hear noises, and I want to be able to have the police come, I want to know that there's a law
Valid,
that
valid,
protects me.
very valid.
Well, I would think if business grew,
I'm probably gonna go
That
with it.
extent.
Gross.
you'd have to move it.
Or take open water to the farm.
Yeah, yeah. Have to move out some of the cows, I guess.
I'm not saying that would be bad.
All
So
right,
those-
Do you have
those
any
are-
other concerns? I want to make
Um,
sure that you're heard.
I think that's really it. My biggest concern was I didn't know what this license meant until I came here. And it's just noise control and parking is basically, I guess.
Well, I think the parking, if the parking becomes an issue, I would think you would call the local police, right? Caleb
But I don't wanna have to
any
monitor
control.
that.
It's our job.
Yeah.
No, and if nobody tells them, they don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, they should see it because
it's not, you can't miss it.
they do drive down that road.
Yeah.
I saw, if you're satisfied, I'd like to
Yep,
allow
thank
another person to talk. Thank you. Come on up, Tony.
I just wanted to ask a question. Is, the Board of Health already granted, approval of this? Okay. That was the only question.
Are there other comments from the public? All right, are there other questions from the board? All right, all those do we have to sign the license and pass the license? Okay, so all those in favor of granting the license? Aye. And then I need a motion to sign the license.
Motion to sign the license.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations.
Thank you, guys.
Good luck.
Appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Cheers.
Good luck.
Hopefully see everybody down there.
Look forward to coming
And
in.
go
having a
see your
taste.
new neighbor.
Yeah, sounds good.
Can we get rolling?
Perfect.
Can we get rolling?
Yeah.
So I move to close the public hearing.
Caleb. Oh, yeah.
Thank
What are
you.
you doing? Good.
I move to close the publilic hearing.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, We'll have to catch up. I get it.
Good catch, Alicia.
Okay, we have a presentation of Michael Rittinger, Director of Engineering, Unique Media Systems.
No.
Oh, Lance.
Lance.
Is Lance here?
Yes.
Oh, good to put a face to the name. All right. Lance of Salisbury Community and TV Media Center.
I don't want this to be long, but would you mind if I pulled up a chair?
Go ahead.
No.
Michael here. There you are. I've known Michael for many years, I've known Caleb for many years, I've known Alicia for many years, and we've all talked, a lot of us have talked. I run the Salisbury Community TV and Media Center. And we've been in operation over 10 years now. And we've looked for opportunities to cooperate and collaborate with all three of the Triton towns especially. But Alicia asked me here recently if I would speak briefly about the advantages and disadvantages perhaps of forming a nonprofit corporation to run your town's public access operations as opposed to doing it out of the town. And I just made a few notes, and we'll give you a couple of ideas on that. I assume that's the topic of interest, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
First of all, I think that a nonprofit organization can better encourage public access and expression by hiring professionals whose job it is to increase the public education and outreach with your citizens. There's both a practical concern, because I think an independent organization is not as conflicted about their role in dealing with the public as the town government may be. It's a little more, it's an arm's length distance, and what you'll often find is that in trying to increase that outreach, they can actually help some of the town's communications problems in a more direct and better way. There's a whole series of knowledge of technology and changes and things like that they can bring to it that can actually increase the town's communication, the administration's communication with the public. But to have that arm's length distance is helpful, we found. That's certainly something to consider. I think that as long as the government controls the media, there's always a subtle form of dissuasion and discouragement, and a slightly higher obstacle to citizen involvement. I think that separate organization can help with that. It's a question of trust and transparency and perception. If you've got that independent organization that has its own bylaws and board of directors, they can provide that both the reality and the perception of an independent view. A nonprofit organization can broaden the scope of community media partnership with individuals and organizations and businesses. You know, there are changes coming, as you probably are aware, as cable TV revenues continue to decline. I don't know how much they have in Newbury because of cord cutting and the pending rule that has just in the process of being affected by the FCC. There will be changes, probably reductions in the income from cable TV. In particular, leaving aside the whole internet and all those phone and all those other things. But a nonprofit organization may be in a better position to do just as we're starting to do now, which is to explore getting corporate and business underwriting for our operation. And that's something that might be harder for the town itself to do. There's a question of insurance and liability, and questions of slander and libel and free speech. The town has much deeper pockets than the organization does. So if someone was going to sue you, and we've had threats of that, we've been on the edge of that, and I'll describe that in a minute.
This is the nonprofit's been on the edge of lawsuits?
Well, it wasn't clear whether it was going to come to the nonprofit or the town. I'll tell you the circumstance in a minute, but the broader point is that the nonprofit organization does not have as deep pockets, and they frequently, I don't know what the town has or can have, but for instance, we have media professional insurance that guards against anything that may, is that the same with the town? Then it may not be as big an issue. But still, to do the due diligence and to separate the operation from the town is of some use in those regards. I'll mention what I've started to say in reference to this. We were, SCTV was incorporated by the same attorney who negotiated our original agreement with Comcast. So the The organization was formed, with the aid of this attorney. The original, agreement was negotiated by this attorney. He has subsequently, renegotiated our agreement with Comcast, and if I understand correctly, he has been the person who has done that for the town of Salisbury, for Newbury as well. So, also, if I understand correctly, your new license agreement with Comcast is modeled after Salisbury's because of the association of the attorney. I would see no reason why, if you wanted to go ahead and form a nonprofit organization to run your media center, you couldn't just borrow ours again. You know, take what you need and leave the rest. But it shouldn't be that hard a prospect. It's not that difficult. If you have any legal help at all, which you could probably get for nothing or next to nothing, I think you could put that in effect. In Salisbury, the Board of Selectmen actually nominated a board of conveners, and it was their job to pick the first board of directors for the organization. I was on that board, not the conveners, but the first board of directors, and I resigned subsequently in order to take a job first as the interim executive director and then as the executive director, where I've been for the last 11 years. We think it's worked out well. We think it also might have benefit with that board having the authority over the spending and the budget for both capital and operating expenses. You would do something that I and a lot of other people might find useful, which is to associate with and cooperate with the other two towns, and with Triton to further their goals and objectives and make it easier to exchange and allocate money and things like that. I know that this board and the town meeting went ahead and made a very healthy contribution to Triton's equipment package. They recently came back to us and said, well, we were short by this much, so we've actually increased that by quite a bit. We've made side donations to their fund to do some other things, like we just bought them a whole a Wi-Fi headphone system so that they could do sports events and things like that. And we've equipped our own van. It's a youth van that we got as a donation, and equipped it with 3 cameras and all the switching equipment. And we expect that Triton football games and other things outside, that they'll actually be the largest user of that van in the coming 6 months. We're very happy to support them in this last spring, as the Triton girls went quite far in their softball tournament. So I think those kinds of cooperative ventures with Triton and support could actually be easier with it's just one less step, one less political consideration. But I'll let you think about that. I just think that a nonprofit organization can act as diplomats and emissaries to the residents and the businesses in the town, represent an independent voice, and can still help the town in many ways further their own communication with the residents and businesses, and that it's a good idea. I think it's just finally a matter of philosophy. It's a question of free speech and a free flow of information. Do you want to reinforce the separation of powers and maintain media as a separate organization, or keep it centralized and controlled? I think that may be the most important part of it. It's a signal that you send to your citizens that you believe in independent local media and you have the courage to stand up for that freedom of expression and information. So, unless you have any questions, that's really
How,
summarize it.
say something came before a nonprofit like this that was obviously offensive, gender, racial, whatever it may be, politically motivated. How do you handle that? Do you just let them run it?
Well, As a rule, yeah, the answer is yes. The FCC has guidelines that really go back to obscenity and a few other things that it will hold up and say, yes, you can censor on that basis. But as a rule, free speech is the rule. And, you know, we've had times when people have said things that, for instance, really flew in the face of the town manager and the town government, what they were doing. And in fact, let me tell the story, because this goes back to the thing I was commenting about before. We had a situation in town, in Salisbury, where the group of individuals, sisters actually, had a long-standing complaint and lawsuit with the town. And they actually went to Worcester, found a sympathetic person, it never came to us, but they went to Worcester and recorded a whole program of their allegations against the town. And when the town got wind of this, they tried to put forward a motion or just informally work with us to prohibit anyone from speaking and putting their program on who had a lawsuit against the town. And the same lawyer that we know, who was employed by the town, not formally by us, although we did approach him, was very quick and just stood up to one of our selectmen and said, forget it. You are opening yourself up to all sorts of problems, lawsuits, and you know, the FCC has set up all this legislation to promote free speech and ideas. And
So
what we did,
but barring nudity and obscenity, anything goes.
There is some.
I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, no, but there is some, what the FCC rules are, you can't be obscene, you can't promote hate speech.
And the town could adopt, I think, a policy that they would only show after a certain time if they
Yeah,
fell
there's
into that
time
category.
restrictions, prime time, you know,
Right,
that kind of stuff.
exactly.
We could have like nighttime programming.
After 10. But barring that, anything like that, you really can't say no, correct?
Yes, and the point that we wanted to make is that what we did quickly was to allow anyone, in this case it was the town manager, to offer a rebuttal to this speech. And we always played them in pairs so that it was clear, here's one side, here's another side. And generally that's but if I'm not mistaken, and we could all research this a little bit better, I believe that even as a town, you are subject to those FCC regulations.
Oh, we are.
And I believe your contract with Comcast says that you
Yeah.
can do that. So you've already got language and rules that move in that direction. Putting it in the hands of a nonprofit organization removes it one step from you and leaves your hands a little cleaner in doing all that. And that was the message that the town government took to heart when the lawyer said, don't touch this. This is, you are opening yourself up for all sorts of
Censorship and all
problems.
this. The other thing that we not supposed to, town, can't put on is copyright without copyright. So you can't take somebody else's work, claim it as your own, and put it on the air. I mean, there's rules for that too.
How much of the Comcast allocation does the 501c receive? Does Salisbury keep some of it, or does all of it go into your coffers?
In Salisbury, we get virtually all of it. There's one other fee that is built into most franchise agreements, which is a 50-cent per head fee collected once a year that the town keeps ostensibly to put into further franchise negotiations and things like that in the future. I'm not quite sure, in our case, I think it probably goes to the general fund, but there was recently, and I don't know where Newbury stands with this, but the Department of Local Services and the DOR in the state has recently said we're going to start enforcing a law that's been on the books for 4 or 5 years that we've really been turning our heads and we're gonna start doing it now. And all of the, not to say all, many of the organizations out there in the Commonwealth and the municipalities with them quickly enacted new bylaws to accept the funds from the cable operator for the purpose of pay
Yeah, we did that.
operations. Did you do one
We
of those
did that, I
recently too?
believe we did that.
So if the money goes into the nonprofit, where is the accounting for the town? Is the town still on the hook as to how the money is used? I mean, suppose you wanna buy yourself a car. I mean, where are the checks and balances for the town? Is the town still responsible
Yeah.
for the money?
Well, we have a, in fact, we have a reporting system to notify the town of our budget and spending.
So the town still is on the hook for how the money is used?
On the hook sounds like a legal
Responsible.
argument, and I'm not sure.
Who's responsible for how the pay money is used? Like if there's a problem 5 years down the road that suddenly exposes itself, is it the nonprofit's sole responsibility or is it also the town's responsibility?
I think the town can, it's something, that extreme can step in and say, no, we're seeing the reports, or the reports aren't good, or something like that, and now we have to take action.
So the responsibility though for how you use the money is still in the town's hands?
Ultimately, I would say it is.
It's just,
Ultimately, I
we
would
can
say
clear
it
that
is.
up later, I'm just trying to understand a little bit.
So, can you give me a little bit of history of when Salisbury Community TV started and how it started? Because we're really in the infancy
Yeah.
spot, so how did you guys start?
Well, it started, remember Comcast used to provide those services of televising meetings and offering its services to the community. It did that for 10 years, say going back throughout the 90s. Perhaps even earlier, I'm not sure when it started exactly. But they and most of the other cable companies decided at some point they wanted to divest themselves of that responsibility. So they ultimately decided to give that to the municipality and let them decide how they were going to do it. Salisbury went through a period where the business of the town and the selectmen was not always so well regarded by the population, let's say. And a number of individuals came forward with and went to Comcast and said, we want to use your equipment to televise this meeting and that meeting. And it really shone light on the whole situation there. So there was a history of citizens united to form that kind of communication. And when the Comcast decision came up to divest themselves, they were already sort of in place to go ahead and incorporate and form that as a formal body. That happened, the contracts and things were drawn up in 2007. It went into effect finally in 2008, and we've been existing as an organization since then. Does that help?
Because I know some of your community media stuff that you guys do is good. You have that Salisbury Speaks session. You have candidate nights that are well aired, and the stuff that I've seen is very good. And like, we don't have anything like that in Newbury, and I want it.
I think that a nonprofit organization with a professional staff is the best way to put that in place. That's their goal, they know what they're doing, they can do it, they will do it with your input and help, I know. But that's their job, is to get that out there, and if you hire the right people, if they hire the right people, I'm sure that will come to pass. Now, your budget and your population is smaller, so obviously you're not gonna have the resources that a giant like Salisbury has.
Yeah. And your location was in Salisbury Town Hall for a long time, and now it's moved, correct?
Our primary operations are still there. We have an interim studio, in a commercial building on Elm Street. And the size of that has just reduced. We are, taking active steps to try to renovate a section of the old Memorial School in Salisbury as our media center and studio. But, we've been working on that for quite some time, and there's lots of hurdles, and I'm sure finding space would be a challenge for your, or whether you had an organization that knew within the town, I'm sure that would be a challenge as well.
How large is your annual budget?
We're up at about 220,000 right now.
And just to clarify, does the town contract with you to record meetings, or do they record their meetings on their own? Is it like, what is that relationship? You know, we're on camera now, and
Yeah.
that's been done by inside the town. If we have a 501c3 like Salisbury does, what is that relationship and how does that work?
Our agreement with the town says that the organization will record as many meetings as possible requested by the town, to the extent that that the organization can provide volunteers to do that. We primarily had volunteers doing that for many years, and we've since shifted over to I think we only have one volunteer televising meetings now. So we've been able to handle that within our staff budget, and it's just more reliable.
Yeah. Well,
We just as soon have townspeople doing other things if they have the energy and the interest to do television.
Well, we've asked all of our meetings to be recorded, and so I wanted to find out what that relationship looks like, because
You should expect for them to continue doing that. I think you'd want to build that in. And probably increase I don't know how these sound, but I feel like I'm some distance from the microphone, and it may be.
We're also in a temporary location, so.
We're camping here.
Yeah.
That's right. I'm sure all of these would be factors that
Yeah.
you'd have to juggle.
Any other questions? Well, Lance, thanks for coming in,
We
give us
appreciate it.
the once over on the nonprofit public media.
Please let me know if there's any other way we can help, and we always look forward to cooperation, collaboration.
Appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Lynn.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
We won't have any discussion before we move on about what you said, or if you wanna digest it, or what do you wanna do?
that's up to you guys, I need to digest.
Lots to
Yeah.
digest. Yeah, I think, and also we got a lot on the agenda tonight.
Yeah, we do,
Yeah.
but, so, what would the next steps be? Can we just digest it and then come back at our next meeting and
I think if we put on the agenda for discussion and talk about how to,
move
We can
forward?
move forward.
yeah, if we wanna move forward with the 501c3 and what moving forward looks like.
Okay.
Susan?
I think I'd like to introduce Michael Reidinger too. He's here on his own time. He is from Unique Media Systems. I had met with him with regard to equipment and studios, and later learned he has both nonprofit and public experience. So I asked him to come in and address the board and talk on both sides of the house for you, and also answer any other questions. So I think it would be advantageous for you to just take a few minutes and listen to what he has to say.
Yeah, come on up, Mike.
All right.
Thanks for coming. You're welcome.
Okay, pardon me if I look at my notes.
That's okay.
Not at all.
And you can pull up a chair if you want, that's okay.
I need to get one. All right, just give a little background. I've been running my company for 15 years, building public access stations all over New England. And prior to that, I was in the community that I lived in, which is the central part of the state, a little small community, smaller than this one. And we started, a number of us volunteered, started the station in that town. At the time, there was just a little bit of stuff going on at the high school, nothing going on there at all. We negotiated the contract with the cable company, which was Charter at the time. And we started the station, and I ran the station as a president and board of directors for 15 years. So I've got some fairly good experience in this market. I work with a lot of communities all across, particularly across a lot of in Massachusetts. Massachusetts has some of the best supported public access in the country because they've taken it seriously. Public access really is for the people. It's where they learn. I tell you, I've seen this often. They love to see these meetings because they can sit at home, learn about what's going on, and then if there's a hot issue, then they come down and they'll talk. But it's really nice for people to be informed. The other piece that people really like a lot is they like when they cover the sporting events, high school and such, and even grandma and grandpa down in Florida can nowadays see it streamed or watch it video on demand. So a lot of things are going that way. A lot of stuff is done over the internet nowadays. Things are changing in this market. There's been a big push afoot by, let's just say, some companies trying to influence what's happening with the public access funds. Now, the Cable Act of '85 said that a portion of the money is allocated for this public access need, and it is really a good thing for the people. And Lance talked about 501c3s a lot, and there are trade-offs. In the town that I was involved in, we formed a 501c3 corporation. It just worked very well, particularly back at that time when you negotiated your capital money with the cable company, you gave a chunk of cash, build your put up your equipment, and then you use the rest of the funds for operating expenses, whether it's staff or paying volunteers, not paying volunteers, but it's not, you might pay somebody to come in and cover a meeting. So it's you have to manage how you do this, because a lot of times it used to be all volunteers, and that's harder now, and it's hard to get good qualified people. So that's why in some towns they like to pull it under their wing, to have it under. Now it's very important that you have it under appropriate department, because if you just say, okay, it belongs to the town, but someone's not managing it, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough on you guys. So you need to have it under the appropriate department so that it is managed properly, and then you get typically you might have a paid staff person, which could either be just paid through the funds or on the as a how you decide to do it. But that can you can manage it very well. And what you'll find is that you're going to be able to cover your meetings, which is a lot. People really want to see that, and you get meetings covered, and it gives you the best control over what's going on. There's a fund. There's like Lance said. There's two things going on. There's the cord cutting, which less and less people are on cable. The older generation definitely is still on cable. They're used to watching their TV on cable, and they do. But the younger generation, they're watching on their devices. And so you have to be able to stay on top of all that. It means you have to upgrade your equipment. You have to make sure that you've got the video on demand capability, the live stream capability, and the ability to bring signals back from remote locations from around town, or to cover meetings and things like that. And the reason I talk about it that way is because that's what I do. I help state communities build their stations, manage it. So if you do go the route of a 501c3, it behooves you to always have a contract with this, because it's a separate company. And you want to have a contract where it clearly spells out your expectations. If it's in a department of your town, it's a lot easier to manage that yourselves. So you've got those two to work with, which gives you the best control over your funds, the best control over the contents. It's not the contents as such, but how the whole project, the whole issue is managed. Some communities separate them out. Okay, I work with a number of communities. Like, I'll give you an example. We are under contract to the city of Somerville. The public access is run by a separate corporation. The government and educational is run by the city. The city of Worcester happens to have three separate ones: public, separate government, separate education, separate. A lot of communities, the education is run at high school, particularly if they have a new high school. A lot of the new high schools are building because everybody's doing everything video nowadays. I mean, you just can't get anywhere without something being covered, and it's being covered on their phone. They're all doing a lot of videos, so they're offering that as a program to the school, and that's a very good way to do it, because then you get kids interested in it. They help cover the stuff. You can even have them come and work for your station.
I have a question.
Yes.
When you said there was a town out in the west part of the state that had three, they had one public, one education, and one government.
That
They
was
have three separate channels too?
Worcester, yes.
They have three separate, so government's only one
most-
channel,
Yes.
and education's on another channel, and public's on another channel?
Most of them are that way.
Oh, wow.
Okay, unless you just don't, you're such a small, I mean, you get way up the western part of the state, and they have just one channel because there's just not very many people.
Not
Not
enough to
everybody
fill
has cable.
multiple channels.
Exactly, they don't have enough content. But if you get into a bigger city, like Worcester or Somerville or Boston, anything like that, they have 3 channels. As a matter of fact, we built one out for Canton recently. They have 4 channels. 4th channel is an HD channel because they are handing out HD now. And Comcast,
We're getting
I won't say anything, I just say they weren't giving them out a while ago. But Verizon started giving them out, RCN gave out HD channels, and so Comcast is getting on board, and they're handing out HD channels now. So you can get an HD channel, you just have to, of course, you wanna be ready for it, with the HD content. You need to have equipment for it, but that's a separate issue. I think that pretty much, I just want to say there is a balance between town managed, you're in control of it, you can maintain control over how it's handled, but I recommend you have it in a department. Because then that department is responsible for it, don't just leave it willy-nilly there. Or the other one is if you hire a 501, or if you hire a 501c, have a good contract, well negotiated, well spelled out what your expectations are. I don't know if any questions I can answer.
Well, thank you for coming up and talking to us.
Yeah, appreciate that.
I'm happy to.
No, it was a good mix, thank you.
Yeah, definitely more to digest.
Always.
You made it as clear as mud. It was good.
Okay, I'm sorry, there is a lot to cover here, there's a lot going on, particularly with the changes coming on right now with the FCC.
Yeah.
Everybody's going like, I don't know what's going on, where's my money coming from? And that could be your biggest challenge if you don't have control over the town. You can still maintain this if you have control over the town.
Right, if, providing, like if funds were cut, or that PEG
If
money was
the
cut.
funds shrunk, you could get to the point where, oh gee, we can't cover our meetings anymore. Or if you maintain it in town, you can, because you're providing a service to the entire community by doing this.
Yeah, but if we took it, see, you'd have to fund it with taxpayer money then.
Well, there's still funds coming in, you potentially could do that, there's ways, in the town I lived in, the town helped us out a lot, because we had $600 a year to start, it was nothing to run it, we just had volunteers, and we managed to do fundraising and get the thing going. Then we negotiated a contract, we got a little bit more money, but the town helped us out, they gave us a room in the basement, a nice new building they took over, they didn't care about it, we were happy to get it, we renovated it, set up a little studio, and set up all our stuff down there. That didn't cost us any money for that, because it costs a lot of money if they have to go build a building or something like that. They'll wipe you right out. So it saved us money, so we could take our meager dollars and utilize them to cover meetings and stuff. And then what's happened in town, since I no longer live there, so but I know what's going on with people in town. And what they do now is they just pay, a little stipend to someone to cover the meetings.
Right.
And then they're staying on the air, and then they use their meter funds very judiciously.
Right. Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mike. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
If I could just add too,
Sure.
I'd like to perhaps recommend that all or some of you talk to Sarah Brocher, who's doing some of our work right now. She was and had worked within a nonprofit before she came to the town of Newbury. We also have Adam Stander, who's been filling in and helping us. He also has nonprofit experience as well as working locally, so I recommend that you take the opportunity to speak with them. They might give you a different perspective. And we do share, certainly with Salisbury, our school district, along with Raleigh, but I think that we also share a lot more in common with people of the town that live on Plum Island, and we've got Byfield, and we've got Newbury. We've got a very diverse community with very little commercial offerings. to allow for different variations of content to be delivered. So I really think that, more time needs to be spent on really trying to pull the public in and engage them in bringing us content that we don't have today. Not that it's not available. Okay?
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Susan.
Thanks, Sue.
All right, before I skip over, grants, gifts, donations, we vote to accept Central Congregational Church donation to the Council on Aging.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you to the Central Congregational Church.
Sorry, discussion, we should send a thank you.
Agreed. All right, Richard,
Wanna do those?
Get those out of the way. Sign.
yeah.
Yes.
I signed the PR 19-27 for Ellen Jameson, signed the PR 20-01, the Board of Selectmen and Ellen Jameson. Signed the VW 20-02 Mass Municipal Association WEMO Leadership Conference registration.
Just didn't wanna forget.
Yeah. You're jumping around, how that goes. Richard Capalupa, request for approval of 89 Hanover Street sewer tie-in. How are you?
Fine, how are you?
Good.
So I own the building at 89 Hanover Street, and some time ago, the previous owner was notified that the septic systems that were there did not meet Title V. So, I think for a long time, he hoped that problem would go away, but it didn't. So, Board of Health, I believe, wrote him a letter he did last year and said, you gotta get your body here and do something. And, at the time, it was, talked to some people, and it was very clear that he was not gonna be able to build a septic system there due to the proximity of the marsh, which is pretty much close to the back of the building. So, we went to the town, it was, I think even the town of Newbury was involved in this discussions about going to Newburyport and seeing if you could get permission to tie into the septic, to the sewer system. So we did in fact go there, and, Newbury, the city of Newburyport, Department of Public Service, the sewer department did approve the tie-in. Then we went back and we got a, Concom approval from the town of Newbury. Board of Health approved it, if Newburyport approved it. And then they did a DEP notification. That cleared. Then I went to the DPW director, whose name is Jim. He said that he would give us the road permit, but he cautioned me that we can't cut the road. And I have a as-built drawing in hand that I showed him, and I think you guys have a copy of it as well, that depicts the sewer line off the roadway by at least a couple of feet. So I think, everybody has touched the ball except for you guys, so, and approved it. So that's fine.
Okay, any questions from the board?
Is this the same one that was before us before?
That's a house, a very small lot across the street was before, that was for residents.
Yeah,
This is the strip mall, right? This is the strip mall.
Oh, so this is
It-
not,
It's like the garage by the train tracks.
this is
That's
not
how I
the
would describe
home,
it.
this is not the same one.
Correct.
This is
Other side of the street.
Plumbo's buildings.
Doug Wallace, father's building, yes.
I guess the only question, and this is not necessarily a question for you, is I thought Title V required that you had septic when you sold the property. So I'm curious how that happened. And maybe I just don't understand that law well enough.
Well, I think the Title V is really required by the bank
Okay.
to make sure they didn't get stuck with a problem. I think.
Yeah, I see no reason we can't
Well, I
approve
didn't-
this as provided it doesn't violate the road cut issue, which you say won't do.
I don't think Title V is, and maybe this is a question for Doug, is Title V is just a banking issue, is it?
I'm gonna do the best I can without misinforming you. I'm
DEP.
not Board of Health and Conservation, but Title V is a state law.
Yeah.
And it's required, when you sell a property, you're required to have your system inspected. And I believe there's a 2-year period after the sale by which you can upgrade and meet the requirements.
Okay,
So it's a coverage.
thank you.
Well,
Yeah.
like 1 year and 6 months. left.
Okay,
But I actually want to get it done long before school opens.
yeah.
So we're looking at the only board that hasn't okayed it, and the Board of Health, Arthur, the Board of Health has okayed it, do you know?
It's not a Title V system, so I don't even know if the Board of Health gets involved in this. This is a force main into the
Yeah, I don't think
Newburyport
the Board
system.
did.
So this is something totally different.
They did in fact prove it, whether they should have or not is,
They
Okay.
did.
I can't answer.
But I mean, all our boards, Ellen, do you know, everyone that's online has approved that needed to be, is there any place that needs to go after us?
Conservation voted an order of conditions for it. It was really just for the short-term impacts of installing it.
So the only question that I have is, when I was reading this, preparing for this meeting, from the city of Newburyport, this email is confirmation on Tuesday, August 21, 2018. The Board of Water and Sewer Commission voted to allow the connection of 89 Hanover Street to Newburyport sewer system. Please note, the sewer force main line in which 89 Hanover Street, Newbury is proposing to connect to is owned, operated, and maintained for the entire length by the town of Newbury. It is not owned, operated, maintained, and/or the responsibility of the city of Newbury. No, I didn't know that.
I can do.
Okay,
So we own that all the way down from the Newburyport line to the school?
I guess.
Oh,
Yeah, that's true.
except we're not maintaining it there.
So then it
We
says,
have to ask them.
it says the fees are based on usage. Did you ever talk about fees, or does that not matter?
They're gonna send me the bill for fees.
Okay. Well, I don't see any problem why he can't hook up to this. It's not gonna affect the road. It's, the only thing that concerns me is if the pipe breaks, but you don't have insurance for that.
I honestly can't say I have insurance for that, but if the pipe breaks, it will be the same as if
Anybody else's pipe.
it broke anywhere, you know, come to, you see it gushing out of the ground. I guess the city report was come, that's certainly that would be the end of it, I think.
But it's Newbury's pipe.
But excuse me, I misspoke. So if it was gushing out on the ground on my property, my property, that would be my problem.
Yeah.
But once it's in the sewer line, it's not my problem.
Yeah.
So I own it till it gets out onto the street.
Yeah, so I move to approve the sewer tie-in, provided there's no road cut.
Second.
Any other discussion? No. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Good
Thank you very much.
No, thanks.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Review, approve, and sign 2019 business license renewal as follows. James Sullivan, DBA Rusty Can, 6G Fruit Street, Common Vic.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion?
Turning it on.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Fiscal year 20 appointment to Board of the Boston Trail Committee. Someone has that tab, please pull it out. I was here quite a while today. We have limited time at the house.
It is Brian J. Baldwin.
To appoint Brian J. Baldwin for a 1-year term. No, that isn't correct. To appoint Brian J. Baldwin, 7/23/19 to 6/30/2020.
Motion to approve?
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, appointments to the Upper Green Committee.
So per Alicia's request, I've created a little bit of a scoring matrix. I just had 3 elements. The scores would be added up for each applicant based on their submission. Scores would be given from 1 to 5, with 1 being an indication of dissatisfaction, 5 being excellence, and the categories, I just have 3 categories. Does the applicant bring relevant experience or knowledge? i.e. architect, engineer, landscape designer, to the committee that will help in making decisions? Does the applicant have organizational experience that will help in gathering community input? Do you think the applicant will benefit or do you think the person is easy to work with and will be helpful on the committee? And so those were the three that I thought we could score people on, submit the scores to Ellen, and she would contact the people who had the highest scores to serve on the committee.
Why do we have to go for this? I mean, we appointed people last month, we appointed people tonight. Why do we have to go through this hoop?
We don't necessarily, it's just one of the ways that we've appointed people in the past.
This is my idea, so if you want me to
Go ahead.
jump in there. I like the idea of a scoring scheme because, I think it takes out the, I guess, lack of a better word, popularity contest. You know, everybody knows this one, so we're gonna put all, all that on there. I think that,
We're gonna do this all further,
well, we've done it for other committees in the past. We don't have to do this.
I understand, it's like, I just think,
I just think that it helps me, rather than, willy-nilly pick the 1, 2, 3, the first 5 people.
but if we read the letters and we get the qualifications, and if they're here, we can ask some questions.
Right, and that's how you use it to base your score.
All right, but it's like, I just think it's an unnecessary jump.
It's a tool,
All right,
actually.
I'm somewhat indifferent to this application, but I will say when we selected architects and OPMs,
yeah, but that's
we had a positive.
that's a paid job, okay, these are volunteers.
Right.
I think we're putting them through.
I think with this particular one, we are looking for a certain skill set.
All right, okay, it's like I just.
But I'm indifferent, but I have used this method and I have seen positives in it.
All right,
Well, I think that if you use this and you take the score, that's just gonna delineate the 5 that you choose anyway. I mean, you're not gonna basically talk about everyone's score.
No,
You're just gonna choose the
and
5.
I don't see how anybody else scores. Alan sees them all. And
Yeah.
it's anonymous, I mean, I just think,
So yeah, if you guys are comfortable with that, I think you use the matrix, score each of the applicants, submit those to Ellen. She contacts the people who have the highest scores. If they are on the committee, contacts the people who didn't, thanks them for volunteering. So
Well, we
that's
still
how,
probably have to appoint them the next meeting.
I think we
yeah, we would have to appoint them at the next
Have to
meeting.
we can't just say that the vote is the appointment.
No,
You
yeah.
wanna appoint them.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can come back to this for a second, but I've been thinking about town hall, the town hall committee.
I think that's a whole different
Yeah.
discussion, and so let's
All right,
finish.
I'd like to
let's
this.
take this
separate
first.
the two.
All right.
Yeah.
I thought we were taking it together, sorry.
No.
This is the upper grade committee we have.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Has anybody heard from Nicole Lombard by any chance?
move.
I have.
Good
Call.
call.
Oh, yeah, I did, his father reached out to me cause I said to him, you brought it up, I brought it up that Cole is interested. He didn't get his letter in time, I said to him, I would bring to the board, he was supposed to drop a letter off, I was supposed to bring it tonight, and I didn't see it yet, so. He is definitely interested in doing something with the committee.
Maybe he could act in an advisory.
Yeah,
Yeah.
liaison.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I think it would be, it's really advantageous to do it, because he got the ball rolling.
Yes.
Well, he's did a lot of
He did a lot of work,
on it, yeah.
exactly, you got the ball rolling and brought it to our attention. So we can even make him a liaison, that would be nice.
I move to appoint Cole as a liaison to the Upper Green Advisory Committee.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah.
So we're gonna take after this and score each person and send our results to,
Yeah, if you have a question, you can ask.
Well, I just had a question.
What's your name?
Erin Matthews. My question was, if the board does decide on a scheming matrix on how the, board or the committee will be appointed, how are you going to obtain the information which you're basing those scores on?
Good question.
It would have to, it would
You
have to be,
interview.
yeah, it would
That's,
have-
when we went around the first time with the architects and the OPMs, that's what we did. We had,
Interview them, huh?
Yeah.
So we setting up interviews tonight?
But,
or-
you know what, in all fairness, the people that we have just asked, we haven't asked, we didn't ask the right question in the start. We didn't
You
ask.
just asked for names.
Right, we
People
didn't
to
ask for
volunteer their
why,
names.
all that stuff.
Nothing about expertise or anything.
Right, because
Right,
that's
if
what-
scheming matrix is going to be used, then I think that it would be fair for all those folks to actually have the chance to provide that information. with
Absolutely,
names.
absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
It's,
Absolutely.
it's needed, it's necessary.
So basically, you're asking for a resume.
Yeah,
Of course.
so,
Well, I mean, if that's the, if that's the path that you choose to go down, however,
It's like, these are volunteers, and I just, it's like,
listen, you don't have to use the tool.
No,
It's
like,
okay with
I'm
me.
just- I'm
I
just-
think it doesn't matter if you use a tool, that's fine, but I think that you should give everybody, every applicant the opportunity to provide the information, what you're gonna base their
Yeah,
source.
and it,
Doesn't have to be a
the way it
clear
was-
resume, it can just be background information.
Right,
Yeah.
Will-
all right.
Will provide the information that they're looking for and which they're being scored on.
So
I mean, you actually have a point if
No,
it
we
isn't,
haven't.
if it isn't a strict resume,
Yeah.
people should be able to respond to the three separate things as to how they would fit into how well they would do with those requests. I think it's a good point, so we just have to reissue the task as to, ask for responses again as to how they would fit into the three, or just ask for a basic resume, and then it's up to us to decide how.
Well, I
they
don't even
fit
think we
in.
need a basic resume, I think we just need to ask them the questions
So
and
here's
have
what
them
I think.
respond.
Oh, you mean,
We
have
have-
them come before the board in a meeting and do an
Or
interview?
submit them in writing maybe.
We have 6 people who sent in letters of interest for this committee.
Mhm.
One of them sent in a letter only because
Nobody else would.
he didn't think the committee would be seated. So I'd say we let Lon off the hook
And just.
and seat the rest of the committee. That's my proposal right now. Scrap the matrix, even though you asked for it and I wrote it. And
I like that, I like that,
Yeah,
I like that.
If I could stop for 1 second, Jan, you're being very patient. Do you have a question?
No, well, I have a comment, I guess. Excuse me. When anyone that submitted a letter, did they give a reason why they wanted?
Some
And
did.
Yeah.
Some did,
I
some
mean,
did
I know
not.
I did,
Yeah,
but,
some
Yeah.
did, some
and the
did.
only reason Lon did is because he's also on the historical commission, he wanted to make sure one of our members was on it,
Okay.
so.
Basically, they ranged from, I'm interested to, this is what I do and here are my
and here's
qualifications.
why, yeah.
Yeah, cause I mean, I think it was the Plum Island Study or one of them, when it was put in the paper or put on the website, it actually said, please tell us why you would like to be on this committee
Mhm.
and what you could bring to it and why you think it would be appropriate for us to put you on this committee or appoint you to it, so. I just, it's like, it sort of to me just makes sense instead of saying, yeah, I'll help water the plants at the monument, it's not,
Mhm.
it's a lot of work,
What
so.
Selectman Jesperson said though, I agree with, it's like Lon's letter was, if you don't have enough people, okay? So we get 5 people, qualified people, and I think
And I'm thankful for him stepping up too.
Yeah, really, it's like I said, it's like, that's a lot, but also anyone that steps up, I think.
Yeah.
It's like I said, but I agree with what Selectman Jesperson said. We get 5 qualified people, let Lance off the hook, and Lon off the hook, and put these 5 people on. So if you made the motion, I'll second it.
I move to appoint Jan Forrest, Anthony J. Matthews, Amelia E. Random, Robin Etheridge, Fred Thurlow to the Upper Green Advisory Committee till 4/10/19. Oh, what are different dates there? Oh, letter of
No.
interest received. Sorry, for a 1-year term, only 6 months of which you'll have to serve, 7/23/19 to 6/30/20.
Second.
So we're gonna leave it for that board to get a hold of each other and formulate a meeting space and elect their officers.
Well, let's,
You know,
let's just read what
What the chart
what
is.
you've been voluntold. The Upper Green Advisory Committee shall be comprised of 5 members of the community. The function of the Upper Green Advisory Committee is to seek community input about how to improve the Upper Green. Through extensive outreach and discussions, the UGAC, Upper Green Advisory Committee, shall create a prioritized list of actionable projects. The committee shall submit the list to the selectmen 6 months after being formed. They shall start by reviewing the public hearings around the Green ER hearings to get a baseline for citizens' concerns. Prior to reporting back to the selectmen, they shall hold no less than 2 public hearings to present ideas and receive input from the public. Does that sound like a nice idea?
Yeah. And one of the other things in our packet was the Upper Green notes, and I asked Tracy where these came from, and she said it was the third along. I said, there's a good start right there. I mean, there's some good ideas right in these notes.
Well, they're also gonna have to, you know, seek some help with public hearings, there's public notices, you know, there's
Yeah.
expenses.
Oh,
This
yeah.
is not,
No,
it's
it's
not
not cheap.
appear out of the sky.
Right.
So they're gonna have to seek some help from town staff. As you guys formulate, we're probably gonna go to Alan, so.
So I suggest that when you meet, you, pick a fearless leader, the liaison with Ellen and get all that stuff.
Ellen's already done some prep work for you, so.
Thank you, Ellen.
Okay, so all those in favor? We're at that point, right?
Yeah.
Aye.
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 Congratulations.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Sorry it took so long to get there. Who said
I said.
I did, I think we both did at the
did,
same
yeah.
time. Do we, heading into the appointments to the town hall committee, should we hold off because we have, I know, I see many, should we go into all the way discussion? I just hate
skip forward, yeah.
keeping people here all night.
Sure.
Okay, I had heard of concerns about some road work that's being done on Olga Way. It's been an improvement to improve the drainage along the side of Olga Way in Oak Front where it opens up onto the main road and we usually have a standing puddle. I've seen the plans and upon going down there to look at it, there's a ditch right along Olga Way. I mean, it is kind of deep. It's a narrow road. I think it needs a little it needs a little or a lot of fine tuning. What I don't wanna do is like ugly up the neighborhood with a guardrail or something. I really don't wanna do that, cause I wouldn't want it done to me. We do have restrictions on what we can do, having it be on Plum Island. So basically now we should have a discussion. And I'll kick it off real quick. I know Mike had also heard concerns, me and Mike have been working on this a bit together. Looking at it, I think it's a case of where the rubber hits the road. It doesn't quite work in that application. Things are a little tight. I guess I'm concerned a little bit with the no definition between the swale or the ditch, whatever you wanna call it, in the road. Whether it be by split rail fence, a guardrail, or nothing. And just my personal opinion, I think we need to further explore a way to bring the grade back up to original or near original where the ditch is and find out exactly what the process would be for, it's not a variance, it's a request for, what's it, RDA?
I think with asking Doug for some guidance, and he can fill in around what I'm gonna say, but some of the original intent for that was going to be filled with crushed stone, and I think it was turned down by DEP.
Yeah, the original design included a 3 foot by 3 foot by the length of the project, stone trench, wrapped in cloth, and then covered in sand. You would see it was there and it would infiltrate the ground like it is now. DEP, we brought that before DEP. The DEP actually called the town, Rachel Freed called the town and said they were having problems with this down in the South Shore. They wanted to stay consistent between all of DEP's offices, and they said it was pretty much a non-starter for us. So at that point, we pulled that stone out of there, and we ended up with an open ditch.
So if anyone wants to see some, a resident of the island sent me pictures today after the rain. Okay, today, and their concern was the road already started caving in on certain edges.
Well, I wrote down too, but I think where we could go from here, if I have an understanding, is the town can ask the Conservation Commission to do an IDA again, to resubmit to be able to fill that ditch in with crushed stone.
It would be my recommendation for the town to file an RDA with DEP, yes.
And if that can be done, and we can fill the ditch in, then it's certainly going to be amenable and probably work. I mean, if that gets turned down again by DEP, and don't we have places on the island that have already?
There's precedent for it on the island, and DEP has their hand in that precedent, so, it was this upcoming issue, and because they've done this in the past, it doesn't mean that they still have to allow it. If they won their case in the South Shore and they changed their manner of interpreting that regulation, then they can change. They can't flop back and forth. They can't be arbitrary and capricious, just like we can. But they can move forward in a different manner if they want to. And then it would depend on how far the town wants to challenge it. And there's an appeal process.
And if we have the ability to fill it with crushed stone, that would be the best thing to do for the longest period of the workability. And if we can't, we'd fill with sand anyway, so we'll fill it with sand. But it would be nice to try to get the original design back
Yeah, so it
of the
One-
crushed stone.
One thing that everyone needs to understand, and I guess you're the only one of the neighbors I recognize tonight.
So you have to talk a lot.
This could take a few weeks to get the answer back from DEP. Well, maybe we have the DPW do what they can do to kind of stabilize the situation, to wait for an answer. Do you think that would be acceptable to the neighbors? I know it's difficult speaking for
I can't really speak for them, but, it's certainly, and I thank you for it, it sounds like a really good plan. Were you down there today, Jeff?
I drove through.
Yeah, so already there's rivulets cut out of the road and collapsing the ditch, just with that rain we had last night, so. On the other hand, I think it would be terrible to have to just fill it up with sand, and it would really almost seem like a waste of quite a bit of money.
Right.
So if this route is possible, that would be fabulous.
Yeah, our next regularly scheduled meeting that we could entertain this would be August 20th, so it brings us to about the 10th of September. By the time you get through the appeals period, you write the decision.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be mid-September before this could happen.
Well, I don't know what the alternative would be, except maybe.
The alternative is, if it's.
By the end of September, there might not be a ditch anymore, it's really filling up that fast, but,
We do have the town,
Yeah, so
engineer.
I'm Matt Tessier from Arc Engineering. Just to make a comment, the swale, the final depth of the swale is 18 inches. That's what the design depth is, and it does have a layer of sand that's going to be installed. It's a sand swale, and the DPW guys that are doing this, I think, are doing a really good job grading that out. It's a very flat area, and if you have a rainstorm in the middle of any construction project, it's halfway through, you do get immediate kind of erosion. So to judge what's out there and say it's failing already is not really fair. They got to get a finished product. And then, obviously that depth of swale, we made it as reasonably deep as we could to handle those intense rain events that you get through the summer months and thunderstorms and things. But if we want to change that from 18 inches to 12 with just a little bit of additional sand, which will kind of naturally happen anyway. I don't think once it's finished it will look anything really as impending as it does right now. Once that is nice fresh new pavement and it's all gently pitching onto that side of the road, and we see how easily that sheets in and it's controlled so it won't have those erosion areas, I think we may have a different opinion. So just one potential solution is to get it paved, get the sand in there that's required, maybe we put an extra 6 inches and see how it looks, because it may not, they've kind of over dug a little bit now in order to get room to put the sand in that swale, so it looks a little deeper than it really will be when it's finished.
So
it's kind of an immediate reaction to the middle of a construction project.
Yeah. So the original design though didn't speak about crushed stone in there?
The original design we submitted to DEP was full of rock.
Right.
We had,
Basically
essentially what we had is we had like 4-inch minus rack,
Right.
and then we had a layer of smaller rounded stone that you could drive a car over or walk over.
So you being the engineer, we're trying to push, even though it won't have a membrane over it, and will still, probably still fill with sand after years and.
Sure.
You know, not work, but at least it's gonna work for a long time and maybe find a natural way to work.
Yeah.
But I mean, in your estimation, to save Doug a lot of work, because you're the engineer of hire, should we continue to push to try to put stone in the trench?
I mean, we did push to the point where, the whole thing was submitted with rock. We met, we talked with them, we had a conversation with DEP, and they simply stated that if we approved it that way, that they would appeal it. And so that was why we shifted the design to be a sand swale, and we tried to keep the depth of minimum. We could, we could shrink it up a little more, just, it's a trade-off
Trust me,
between.
it'll fill in with sand anyway.
It will, because any drainage ditch, especially on a barrier beach, requires maintenance. In the spring, most years if I have to go out and scrape out some of the sand that got in there. But, obviously, if you trade off depth now, you're trading off volume of water that you can pull off the road. So the harder, the more depth you'll give it, the more water it will handle.
So the engineer of record is saying that if there is sand in the bottom of the ditch, and you're talking probably enough sand to cover the outlets of those pipes, right?
Well, you gotta let it, at those few areas where the pipes are, you'll wanna let that swale just drop down.
But that, if you're talking about putting that much sand in there to make it so that it's not really offensible to the people, we're still gonna get some recognition of the design of what it was meant to do, which is move the water in the right direction.
Yeah, so I mean, you get a tremendous amount, we're lucky to have a tremendous amount of infiltration, so that will happen. And then it's extremely flat. That road is essentially flat from, the whole length of it, really. It changes a couple of tenths over that kind of length. So what we did is we have a one high point, we generally pitched across into the swale, and what those pipes do is they almost just kind of hydraulically connect the whole thing, as if you had an open trench all the way across, but obviously we had some crossings, so the pipes keep it connected. And the low point of the top of the trench is right near Northern Boulevard. So if it does overtop in a really hard rainfall that's, probably a little harder than what we just had over the last couple of days, that trench will fill kind of uniformly, and it will spill at the street right near the catch basin. So instead of having little ponds that will ice up in the winter all over the road, we have it controlled and outletting right near the closed drainage system to get rid of the water.
So what I'm hearing now is, putting the residents through a lot of angst, which is almost a month and a half, and probably the fact of getting turned down anyway, but the redesign of that actually included sand anyway, which would reduce the depth of the ditch. I mean, I don't know, Doug, should the town even bother to ask the board to do an RDA?
It would be a simple ask though, because we have the design plans that have filled. So we can just, we don't delete anything that we had previously, so we could literally
That previous information's ready to go again.
we can give that to you guys. We have a section that shows the detail of what a stone trench would look like, and we can, it would be no additional work by us for you guys to submit.
So you probably should go for it.
It'll cost you $125 to $150 for legal ad.
So you need a motion from the board, yeah.
I better get up and say who I am. Thank you. I'm Minnie Flanagan and I live at 11 Plum Island Boulevard. I just want to make sure that you understand, no one is objecting to this project because of the way it looks. It's not a matter of seeing it, it's not any of that. We really do have safety concerns, particularly when the winter comes along and the snow is there and the ice is there. We're just foreseeing what the road is very narrow. Cars falling in there, even maybe people falling in there, which would raise a terrible liability for the town. But it's not a matter of aesthetics, really. The other thing that we're wondering, and I'm wondering, is if, with the sand in there, and this just hasn't come up, in order to stabilize the sand, you have to grow some sort of dune grass or beach grass or something in there to hold it, I assume. And if the trench has to be maintained, it's not going to be possible to keep that growth of vegetation in there, because when you clear it out, you're going to fill up the
Yes, there's no proposed vegetation. DEP didn't want anything planted there. They certainly didn't want topsoil and seed. Dune grass would simply get lost because again, any drainage structure like that does need to be occasionally cleaned out or it just loses all functionality. But we could certainly adjust the depth of the sand with no adjustments of the plans to be, instead of 18 inches, maybe a foot, and
So
maybe a little more, but you start going less than a foot, and you really don't have much volume left. I mean, so you're still getting infiltration, and it is a low point, so it will help. Maybe you push it to 8 inches, but just understand that there's a trade-off there, so.
If I may, I think we should file the RDA, putting some sand in that trench right now, as it currently is required, at least makes it a little bit safer, a little bit less dangerous, and we can see how it functions. And then if we get denied by DEP, then we can decide whether or not to do the appeal. But I think what makes the most sense now is to have the town file the RDA, finish the project to the grade that it's supposed to be at, so we can see how it functions, get it as stabilized as we can for right now, and then when we get the answers back, we can decide, do we put the stone in? Do we even have the right to put the stone in?
What's next?
And go forward. So I think we go on both tracks right now, is my suggestion.
We'll certainly, and at least when I agree with that, when it's done, everyone will have a better idea, so.
Yeah.
I mean, not having the ability to put the stone in is a blow.
Yeah,
It really changed
It was the
Just a
original,
blow.
yeah.
Because,
I think the reason this came up is because I asked James, the foreman at the DPW, are you putting large or small stone in there?
Yeah.
And that's, so, here we are.
Here we go.
Get the band together.
Right.
Exactly. As long as it's safe, because I went out there and I looked at it, and I wouldn't be happy if that was in front of my house.
One of my neighbors has already backed into it twice, backing out of his driveway.
See, that's concerns me.
Well, and also for bikes riding down the road, there's a car coming, it's a big trench.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll mitigate, yep.
So, I move that the town file the RDA with the.
Request for
Yeah, request for an RDA, to put the stone in the trench.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Would you be willing to communicate to the others?
Absolutely. We'll
Okay.
be done tomorrow.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so
Now,
much.
I am under the belief though, within that is the fact that we're gonna put sand in it for the time being.
Yeah, that's true, right?
It was going to get some sand in it anyway.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
No, and I don't mean just blowing it, I mean how far on the plans. That is not a finished product that you're looking at anyway.
So I think we can, I mean, DP was moving forward with the project anyway. So they'll finish it to the plans. Sorry, it's getting a long day. DPW is gonna finish the plans that we have. We are gonna continue on this other track to see if we can get the stone.
Yes, this should not be allowed to delay it.
Okay, so they'll be putting like 6 inches of sand in that, like, starting like maybe tomorrow.
Whatever their schedule.
They called it off for a day pending the meeting tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you, and please let them know that no one is thinking that they're doing a bad job, they're doing a wonderful job.
Oh, yeah.
They're doing what they were asked to do.
Yeah, they're doing the job.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Ashland.
Thank you.
Just one note on this, if the stone does get approved, the site plan review approved it as designed with the sand swales, and that's in the decision, so that might be a site plan review modification if the DEP goes ahead.
What would we need to do to square that up to planning?
It would be, submission for modification if the board deems that it's a minor modification, there's no public hearing involved. And especially, I think if it were to go through as an RDA, which is, without.
More of an entry level
Yeah,
document.
right.
So, see, the big push is to get that paved. And if we're going too long, then we're gonna be, I think cutoffs are in November now for paving.
Exactly,
Because it's so- because it's so warm, but I mean, we wanna get it paved this year. So. All right, yeah.
Okay, one more question, Martha, on getting that to the planning board. Is there time before our next meeting? Or when do you folks meet again?
The next meeting is August 7th.
Okay. So, yeah, we're not meeting till the end of, it's later August, right, for us?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
would this need to go on your agenda for August seventh?
You could put it on, I mean, I guess it might not even be necessary in the end.
But if it's on
But
there,
if
then
it's on
it
there,
needs to be on there, then we're covered.
Right.
We don't have to wait another 2 weeks. Did you hear that? We're gonna put it on the agenda for
August 7th.
as
Is
a
that
planning
here?
board.
Planning board.
Yeah.
Same time?
Yeah, it might not be heard, it might not be necessary, but if it is, we're covering ourselves.
You wouldn't have an answer by then.
No.
We won't be meeting until August 20th, so.
Okay,
Then we send it in and they have a 10-day appeals period like everyone else, in which time they can get back to us.
all right, so we're looking at early September, so all the more reason to have the DPW tentatively finish it while we await the.
In a perfect world, with no delays, you're looking at about September 10th before you clear with your appeals period.
Okay.
And if anyone wants to really they can go right to YouTube, this will be up really quickly.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. I bet they're aware.
So you
Thank
don't need to have it on the seventh.
Well, the planning board will meet on the 21st, so there might be some logic in meeting the day after.
There might be some advantages to meeting and at least discussing to see if there are any items that rise up to the top that you may want to discuss, and that way at least people would be aware.
Yeah,
They
prior
either-
thoughts.
Exactly. It's either gonna be a minor modification or we see that it isn't.
Okay.
Okay.
I just don't wanna have somebody show up if it's not necessary.
How would we find that out if it's not gonna be heard? Can we,
Do you subscribe to the planning board agendas? That would be.
it'll be on the agenda or
on the
not?
agenda, Right.
Great.
Right.
Good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night.
Thanks. I don't know, fiscal year 20 appointments to the town hall committee. Now, I have posed a question pertaining to myself, not the committee. Before we see people on the town hall committee, I have not received a response yet. What I can comment on is the process. So if we get to the point of tonight of appointing people, for some reason, I would be recusing myself not having heard back from town council yet.
Okay, because of.
Correct.
Well, I've had some discussions with the building committee, who had initially said that they would be willing to serve on this committee. And they're finding right now that they're too busy with the building of the police station to step into another committee. So I'm proposing that we.
As volunteers.
As volunteers.
Yeah, because it's a lot to ask.
That we change the charge, and so I'd like to table the appointments today and discuss the charge and what we are looking at for out of this committee, and possibly, if we want to use a matrix, that we ask people to submit full resumes so that we can judge everyone on the same standards. If we want to forego that, we can forego that, but I think tabling this appointment, again, sadly makes sense. I really want to be moving this forward, but I think given the changes that have to be made to the charge based on the building committee's overextension and serving the town already, that we should be tabling these appointments.
And I think on this one, I think it's probably good to think of it this way, this is pretty technical. Meaning, we're probably gonna take spatial needs that we have already by the sheer amount of space that we use in this town hall. And we're gonna try to shrink it down and see if we can fit it in the old town hall. And then if that doesn't go in the old town hall, we gotta think about, is it an addition on town hall to fit the needs here? And that's gonna certainly mean we're gonna be shrinking some of these spatial needs here. We're gonna be going about more creative ways to try to utilize the space that we could have available within the buildings that we own. So the next step would be, can we fit the spatial needs that have been, attributed to what we already need and put some sort of small addition on town hall? And then if the building committee can't be on it, as we go forward with this, Doug has volunteered, which is a lot, to help Martha in the process, because if the committee goes forward, is because, the committee could have the best intentions to try to shrink down needs and everything else, but then all of a sudden, because Doug was assistant building inspector and everything else, and has access to Sam, and Martha is an architect, a registered architect, you're gonna have, because of ADA compliance and elevator shafts and 6-inch walls because of this and 100-mile-an-hour wind building codes, I don't even know if you can use town hall. So there's a lot of other things that are gonna be put into this thing that people are gonna find that you need to research as it goes forward. So, and I mean, I for one, hope we can use town hall, but I think it just needs to be laid out in a fashion that, like I said, and Damon spoke to it, the building committee would be kind of advisory. Doug said he'd sit on it with Martha, and certainly the architect can be asked to participate in the committee as it goes forward if people have needs. And I saw Tony smile when he figures the town hall can't be used. I don't think anyone said it can't be used. It's just the nature of the beast. You gotta go through that process to see if it can.
I think if we, just steal a saying from someone I know, I think if we read the tea leaves, and I'm just speaking for myself, and I've said it many, many times, do I think using that building and incorporating it and adding on to it is the wisest or most fiscally responsible thing to do? No. As the votes have come through over the last 5 years, do I think it is what the majority wants to do? I think probably yes. So it's been tough for me to wrestle with seating this committee in the charge. It's been a wrestling match, and it's tough for me because I look at myself as a representative of the people. You know what I mean? And life's a little different in Newbury and Byfield and Plum Island. Let's all face it, it's not like everywhere else in the world. Sometimes we do things a little different here. And if it's okay to take a chance that we might spend a little bit more to incorporate the town hall into a plan rather than tear it down and build new, if that's what everybody wants, it's okay with me. My job is basically to be a warner of, we might spend a little more, you might take 2 more turns before you get into somebody's office. And we can't come up with a subpar project, but my feeling is I just don't want any misinterpretation of, myself especially trying to railroad us down a road of you have to tear it down. And I'm not convinced. We do things unconventionally as a community sometimes. It's different here, and if we all agree, the majority, that's the road you want to go down, let's go down.
JR, it might even, who knows, what we're hoping is it'll be adequate and be cheaper to use town hall.
You never know. I'd be surprised, but
But
you never know. That'd be great.
That's where you can't speak before the committee does its work, with
Sure.
the assistance of Doug and Martha, and then of course, the architects weigh in. Because, there are certain things you can do and certain things you can't do, and that's where the rubber hits the road. So
my concern is that, A, we have to make sure that we follow the procurement laws that we are. I know that we have to. I think volunteerism in this town is great. I think people have stepped up with the building down in the rec fields over there. Volunteerism is good. In this town is great, but I think that to have somebody that wants to volunteer to help build the town hall, raise a barn, I just don't think it's possible.
Well, like I said, this is gonna be trying to formulate, with everyone's help, certain recommendations to move forward. When those recommendations bounce up against the architect and then finally, going out to bid, that's how you find out.
Right, but I wanna also make sure.
We're heading with that process for the police station.
Right, well, so the police station's another thing, but I also wanna make sure that the needs that have been identified that are needed, these are space needed, that's needed, corners aren't cut. I wanna make sure that Martha doesn't live in a closet anymore, and has space to store all of her
If you
her
think that's
stuff.
a closet now, you should have seen the other closet.
I know what's the other closet, and I wanna put it back in there. I just, not that we're gonna grow, grow government, but the town is gonna grow. People are gonna be building, they're gonna be doing projects, and she's gonna get more of these big things that she's gonna put in place.
Well, what we don't even know, Alicia, is if we can really use the basement.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's gotta meet certain codes to be able to use it.
We can't go back to having black mold in
Well,
there.
you can't get rid of septic, you gotta find a way to use.
Yeah, but the mold is still in the walls.
But if you can't use the basement, then you're in a real problem.
Right.
space-wise.
I mean, this committee has a lot of work to do to figure out what the most viable steps are. And talking with Bob Connors, what he thought might make sense is to have them look at trying to fit in with a renovation, building new. He had 5 different steps: continuing to rent ad infinitum, and there's one other option that I'm not remembering off the top of my head. But I think we need to retool the charge, which I'll work on because it was my idea. If people have suggestions or things that they'd like to see in there, please send them to me, and I'll try and get it reworked so that we can actually seat this committee. I think the thing that's important if we're going to use a matrix to select who's going to seat on it is that we contact everyone who submitted a letter, ask them specific questions, and have them submit their resumes because this is a more technical job.
Yeah,
than-
I don't know, do we want resumes or do we want something that, like we did, like Jan said, with the Plum Island Committee?
I think resumes are good because this is has some technicality to it. Also, why people want to serve is important. I mean, what they bring is a valid question. Whether it's time in town, passion about the area, whatever it is. I mean, different individuals have whole different ranges
Right.
of skills that can be useful. But unless we ask to know about it, it's hard unless you know the individuals. I know everyone who submitted a letter. So I feel like I can fill the matrix out. I don't know that everyone else can do that. So we need to get that information.
Yeah, more information on an interview would certainly help me.
Yeah.
When we go to.
And how about a fiscal impact on this? Do you, I hear what you were saying, Jeff, about, do we wanna renovate or do the basement?
I mean, they're gonna, I think the committee is going to produce a product. I think the limitations when they find themselves getting down the road, unless they're gonna be able to get tremendous technical advice from Martha and Doug, unless these guys have the ability to really multi-face against Mass General Code and tolerances for, building materials and every other thing, I mean, how deep are they gonna go? My vision for this committee would be within the realms of, after you have some sort of envelope that has to be built out to the new codes, how much space you got on the inside after a 6-inch wall that used to be a 3-inch wall and an elevator shaft and all this stuff. I mean, my thoughts for it is, we have a general idea of how much space it takes to formulate town government in this space.
Right.
Can we fit that space with certain reductions of space, whether it's cubicles or whatever, people, can it fit in the available town hall now? I don't think so, it's just an observation. So it's probably gonna be the next step, how do you chop down the space usage we have here to fit in a building that is, how big is that building? 1,500, how big is it, Doug?
I don't know.
50 by 60, 2,000?
He's got 2,600 per floor.
Alright, so you gotta figure out how we're gonna use that with the space we need here. And you still need a meeting room in town hall, I don't think you'd be shoving the meeting room over some other building because you don't have enough space. So it probably will need an addition, how's that gonna work? People have gotta figure, not how to build the addition, that's gonna be the architect, but how big is the addition gonna be? I think that's the charge of the committee, unless people have another vision. Because really, it's gonna be for the architect to talk about construction, and he's gonna eventually, with your spatial needs refined by this committee, put a price tag on it. Cause I can't do that. So, I think in all the wisdom right there, they might have a little trouble with the price tag at today's going rate too, you know, so that's gonna probably be the architect.
So my
Although you
vision,
got you got square foot building costs now, right?
You've got building codes, you've got so much more, I mean, you kind of, you're there, but just scratching the surface.
Yeah,
I mean, there's so much more that, you know, just figuring out your spatial needs and then seeing if it fits in the building, that's not all there is to it. There's a lot more to that than you have to determine whether that building can even take that. From an economical standpoint, and like JR says, if people wanna keep it, you spend a little more money for it, and it's gonna cost you a little more money to rehab the building. But that's something that I think that the committee churns out these options and then presents the options and says, here's the different ones, and here's the pros, here's the cons.
So it's
That's
actually
what
a
I was
starting
talking
point.
Yeah.
Right, Doug, it's a starting point.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. And there's a lot of work just to get there.
So I move that we contact the people who have submitted letters to be on the town hall committee, ask them to submit resumes, and if we have questions we'd like specifically asked, we can submit those to Ellen before next week so that she can pass them on when she contacts them.
well, if we were gonna, I don't think we should be asking a lot of questions, but maybe one or two at the most. I think, why do you think you're a good fit for this position? Is one question that we should ask. Does anybody have another question?
I didn't just think about it, we'll have questions, I know questions.
I don't wanna give them like a whole bunch
No.
of questions, but
We
no,
got just some basic questions, you know, what they bring and what they
well,
want to
you
do.
know what they bring, but like they submit their
still-
resume. You know,
And a lot of
Why-
it's
why
gonna,
are you a good
a lot of it's gonna fall back to their experience and their resume too.
right, so, you know, why don't I try to keep it simple?
Alright,
So I move that we contact those who have submitted letters, ask them for a resume, and specifically ask them to write us, what do you bring to the committee, and why do you think you're a good fit for this committee?
Is there a second? Second. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
And I move to table the appointments for the town hall committee until our next meeting.
and thank Doug and Martha for.
Same here.
Thank you, Martha.
You guys are always willing to step up to the plate. Thank you. Yes, Leslie?
When you send out this information to the people the applicants, can you also provide them with some of the guidelines that you're looking for as far as what you want in town hall, so they have like a jump off point where they can.
Oh, I think that would be helpful.
I mean, just like, a brief description as to what type of, person that you'd like to be on the committee, so that might even allow them to decide, well, actually, I don't want that much responsibility, or do I really wanna be part of this? Just a clear.
I'll work with Alan to clarify what we're seeking and what we're saying.
I mean, I think there's gonna be some time involved in it too, in the respects that there will be a meeting. I mean, those might be meetings that are attended by the bunch, there might be some subcommittees that take stuff home, where part of the people discuss certain things to bring back, I mean, there's a lot to this.
Yeah, I mean.
And none of it has ever gone easy when we've done it.
There's an understatement.
Did we take a vote on the table?
No. All those in favor on tabling?
Aye.
Aye. All right, moving on. Appointment of the alternate to the zoning board of appeals, if somebody could pull that up, I got three partial agendas going here.
There's no alternate right now.
Okay.
Tracy wanted to let you know that there was no alternate.
Okay, that's why I'm not
I
finding.
need to make an announcement that an alternate is needed.
Okay. So anyone interested in being an alternate on the zoning board of appeals, please express interest to the town, the board of selectmen's office. Code of ethics policy, can anyone pull that out of their packet? I'm sorry, I was trapped here all afternoon.
Yeah.
Thank you. And what this is, we've been kicking this idea around, since late winter. And basically what this does is it's a commitment between the Board of Selectmen to each other. It's a commitment to the public, and we're also asking for a commitment from the public. And I'll go through it. And basically that we all treat each other respectfully and civilly, and because really that's the only way we're gonna all learn to work together and really get to the root of the problems we face. So I'm gonna just run through this. Hopefully it's not too wordy. There's some info here though. So the preamble is to ensure the citizens and businesses of Newbury have fair, impartial, ethical, and accountable local government that is responsive to the needs of the people and each other, and that the citizens' full confidence in the integrity of the town's government. The Board of Selectmen has adopted this code of ethics. Keeping with the commitment to excellence, the effective functioning of democratic town of Newbury government requires that elected public officials comply with both the letter and spirit of laws and policies affecting town government. Elected public officials be independent, impartial, and fair in judgment and action. Elected public officials work for the public good, not personal gain. Public deliberations and processes be conducted openly unless legally confidential. And all discussions and debate be conducted in an atmosphere of respect and civility. This code of ethics applies to members of the Board of Selectmen, hereinafter referred to as members. Actions in the public interest. Recognizing that stewardship of the public interest must be their primary concern, members will work for the common good of the citizens of Newbury and not for any private interest or personal gain. Members shall provide fair and equal treatment of all persons, claims, and transactions that come before the Board of Selectmen. Section 2, compliance with the law. Members shall comply with the laws of the United States, the state of Massachusetts, and the town of Newbury in the performance of their public duties. These laws include, but are not limited to, the United States and Massachusetts state constitutions and statutes, the town of Newbury's bylaws and policies, Newbury Special Act, and laws pertaining to conflicts of interest, election campaigns, financial disclosures, employer responsibilities, and open process of government, all of which are hereby incorporated herein by reference and made applicable. Conduct of members. The professional and personal conduct of members must be above reproach and avoid any appearance of impropriety. Members shall refrain from abusive conduct, from making personal charges, disparaging remarks, or from verbal attacks upon the character or motives of members of town boards, committees, commissions, of town staff, the citizens, or each other. Respect for the process. Section 4. Members shall perform their duties in accordance with the processes and rules of order established by the Board of Selectmen. Each member shall be committed to respect the democratic process that encourages meaningful involvement of the public and that governs the deliberation of the public policy issues in the town of Newbury. Members must abide by any lawful decision made by a majority of the Board of Selectmen. Members should strive to thoughtfully consider the opinions and recommendations of other members, citizens, and town staff appearing before the Board of Selectmen, and shall remain respectful in all interactions with these individuals. Members shall have no legal authority outside the Board of Selectmen unless this authority has been specially delegated to a member through an adopted policy or majority vote of the Board. To that end, no member may direct town staff to act or not act, except so far as in accordance with the Town of Newbury Special Act. Section 5, conduct of public meetings. Members shall prepare themselves for open discussion of public issues, shall listen courteously and attentively to all public discussions before the body, shall focus on the business at hand. Members shall refrain from unnecessarily interrupting other speakers, from making personal comments not germane to the business of the body, from otherwise interfering with the orderly conduct of the meetings. The chair shall use his or her best efforts to ensure the public who attend such meetings adhere to the same standards of the conduct in this code of ethics as outlined for the members. The Board of Selectmen pledges its respect to the public and each other. The Board asks the public to conduct themselves in a respectful, courteous manner, both with the Board and with fellow members of the public. Should any member of the Board or any other member of the public fail to observe this charge at any time, the chair will ask the offending person to leave the meeting until that individual regains personal control. Should decorum fail to be restored, the chair will recess the meeting until a genuine commitment to this charge is observed. 6, decisions based on merit. Members shall base their decisions on the merits and substance of the matter at hand. No member shall make promises in advance as to how they will vote on a matter which shall properly come before the Board as a whole. Communication. Outside of a duly noticed formal meeting of the Board, members are encouraged to publicly share information that is relevant to any non-confidential matter under consideration by the Board. However, at no time shall such information sharing lead to promises being made as to how that member intends to vote on that issue until it has been discussed and deliberated upon at a duly noticed meeting. Non-confidential documents, including reports, studies, etc., from committees, boards, commissions, individuals, etc., presented to the board are in the public domain and as such shall be made available to the public upon request. Although it is proper to use electronic means of communication to share background information on a particular issue, at no time shall such sharing lead to the deliberation of any business or any decision-making prior to open discussion at a duly noticed public meeting. Concerns involving the conduct or behavior of town employees shall be communicated to the town administrator and never directly with an employee. Criticism of a town employee shall never be done publicly. 8, conflict of interest. Members shall avoid any situation that may give rise to actual or perceived conflict of interest. Where circumstances give rise to an actual or perceived conflict of interest, a member shall not participate in the deliberation of that matter unless a member has appropriately disclosed the situation and has been a determination by the Board of Selectmen that the member's participation is appropriate. Additionally, any member who believes that any fellow member has an actual or appearance of a conflict of interest with any agenda item before their collective body shall disclose that interest. Once disclosure has been made as provided above, where the issue of conflict has been raised relative to a member, the Board of Selectmen shall review the facts and shall vote on whether or not such a member has a financial interest or special interest with respect to the agenda item concerned. All conflict of interest questions relating to a particular agenda item shall be resolved prior to any consideration of the item concerned. And each member shall be entitled to vote on all actual or perceived conflict of interest questions, except those questions pertaining to that member's alleged conflict of interest. Once any member is determined to have a conflict of interest with respect to any agenda item, the member shall move to the area of the room occupied by the general public. I prefer the hallway. The member shall not return to their regular seat as a member of the body until deliberation and action on the item has been completed. 8, gifts and favors. Members shall not take advantage of services or opportunities for personal gain by virtue of their public offices that are not available to the public in general. Members shall refrain from accepting or presenting gifts, favors, and promises of future benefits that might compromise independence of judgment or action, or that might give the appearance of such compromise. Number 9, confidential information. No member shall, without proper legal authorization, discuss or disclose confidential information concerning the property, personnel, government, or affairs of the town, nor shall any member use such information to advance the private or financial interests of himself or herself or members of his or her immediate family. Members shall not discuss privileged knowledge, executive session, or confidential business of the board, committee, or commission with unauthorized parties, either orally or in writing. For purposes of this subsection, confidential information shall mean any information, oral or written, which comes to the attention of or is available to such a member due to his or her position with the town and is not a matter of public record. Information received and discussed during any executive session shall be considered within the constraints of this section, shall not be disclosed to any party unless permitted by affirmative vote of a majority of such board. Number 10, use of public resources. Members shall not use public resources not available to the general public for private gain or personal purposes, such as town staff, time, equipment, supplies, or facilities. 11, representation of third-party interests. As stewards of the public interest, members of the Board of Selectmen shall not represent the interest of third parties before any town board, committee, or commission, nor shall they appear before any of these bodies on behalf of the interests of third parties on matters related to the areas of the service of these bodies. Nothing herein shall be construed to prohibit any member from representing his or her own personal interest or the interest of immediate family by appearing before any board on any item. Number 12, advocacy. Members shall represent the official policies and positions of the Board of Selectmen when designated as delegates for this purpose to the best of their ability. When presenting personal opinions and positions, members shall explicitly state that these opinions and positions do not represent their body or the town of Newbury, and they shall not allow any interference that they do. 13, policy role of members. Members shall respect and adhere to the town administrator's structure of government. The Board of Selectmen shall determine the policies of the town with advice, information, and analysis provided by town staff, town boards, committees, commissions, and by the citizens. Members shall therefore not interfere with the administrative or operational functions of the town or with professional duties of town staff, nor shall they impair the ability of town staff to implement the policy decisions of the Board of Selectmen. Number 14, independence of boards, committees, and commissions. Members shall refrain from using their positions to unduly influence the deliberations or outcomes of any board, committee, or commission proceeding. Positive workplace environment. Number 15, members shall support a positive and constructive workplace environment for the town employees and for citizens and businesses dealing with the town. Members shall recognize that their special role when dealing with town employees and shall in no way create the perception of inappropriate direction of staff. 16, implementation. This expression of the standard of the conduct expected of members of the Board of Selectmen is intended to be self-enforcing. It is most effective when members thoroughly familiar with it, thoroughly familiar with it, and embrace its provisions. For this reason, the Code of Ethics shall be included in the orientation of newly elected Board of Selectmen members. Upon adoption hereof, then at the time of the members entering office, said members shall sign a statement acknowledging they have received, read, and understood the Town of Newbury's Code of Ethics. This Code of Ethics shall be reviewed annually by the Board of Selectmen, which shall consider updates to the Code of Ethics as necessary. 17, compliance and enforcement. The Town of Newbury Code of Ethics expresses standards of conduct expected of members of the town's Board of Selectmen. Members themselves have the primary responsibility for ensuring that ethical standards are understood and met, and that the public can continue to have full confidence in the integrity of government. The chair has a responsibility for intervening when actions of members appear to be in violation of this Code of Ethics. In instances where the chair appears to be in violation of Code of Ethics, any remaining Board of Selectmen member may intervene. In addition to any other penalties or remedies as may be provided by law, the Board of Selectmen may intervene in council members whose conduct does not comply with the town's ethical standards. When a member violation is apparent as prescribed in this Code of Ethics, the actions taken may range from a letter of reprimand by the board, to a censure, to a request for resignation from the elected position. All penalties shall require a majority vote of the Board of Selectmen before being imposed upon the member determined to be in violation. A violation of this Code of Ethics shall not be considered as a basis for challenging the validity of a Board of Selectmen decision, but may be used as a basis for the board to reconsider its decision. 18, separability. If any section, subsection, sentence, clause, or phrase of this code is for any reason held to be invalid or unconstitutional, such validity or unconstitutionality shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions of this Code of Ethics. So, given that, at the end of the winter, I was brainstorming ways with the town administrator to increase faith in our local government, increase transparency, because we've done a lot to increase transparency, bringing in the ClearGov, which that's not quite online yet.
This is, they're working on it.
Right, that's coming on. That'll put all our finances, online for anyone to view real time. And just looking for other ways, and I think a commitment between all of us to do the job by the book and respectfully. And I mean, I completely fall under this too. This is a commitment to me too, to go forward and carry this job in a way that makes the people of the town proud. Are there any thoughts?
Well done. This is a well done document.
All right, thank you. We pirated a lot of it from a different community, but
well done.
yes,
I
Evelyn.
think-
I'm sorry, Alicia.
Who wrote, could you tell me who wrote that?
Basically, this was, Tracy had to leave. I could find out what town this came from, but basically this came from a town on the South Shore of Central Mass, and basically I asked to have it touched up by town council to make it apply more fully to Newbury.
And have we ever had anything like that in place?
Not that I
last
know of.
years?
I mean, I've been told, and here again, the bylaws are so long and old and winding and sometimes conflicting in town. Like, I've been told that some of this is in our bylaws from years ago, but where to source that information, I'm not sure. So I figured it would be a good way to start fresh, reaffirm our commitment to each other in the town, and also ask for my commitment from the
I
citizens.
just saw, and you're reading through, because it's just taking little bits of it, that there was a violation of the First Amendment right of the public.
Which was what?
It seems like there's gonna be censorship from whatever is spoken from the chair, from the public.
No,
So
not.
censorship, the censorship is the board votes to censure its own members.
A censure is, say, I got so out of line, it's completely uncalled for.
Well, no,
The rest of my board members could call for a reprimand against me, a censure against me, which is a more serious form of reprimand in government. It's not towards censuring the public.
Well, you said, someone could be asked to leave
Correct,
this from here.
correct, and that
And that-
rule stands now, as far as I know it. But no one would ever be asked to leave unless they were being outrageous or very rude or intimidating.
To who, though? I mean, it would be, in whose opinion would it be rude? Or-
This board, or the chair, depending on the particular context.
But sometimes the board doesn't like to hear what the public has to say.
Oh, I think this is more for threatening comments.
Nature. I mean, this is,
I mean, if they have to be handcuffed when they go out, I can understand if they're.
I mean,
being attacked.
and honestly, that's really pretty much close to the only circumstance I can picture this being used in.
this is stuff,
This is to bring us closer together, you know, you folks out there and us up here, not to separate us
and
further.
it's really not as much, it's more internally for the board. A lot of this stuff is included in the ethics commission tests we have to take.
All of this stuff.
It's basically.
Yeah.
And it's also under the Town Administrator Act on how we're supposed to interface as selectmen with our other town employees. And there's a lot of, so most of this and the personnel board, this has really been articulated, you know, and has been in place before. It just kind of puts it in one place.
Yeah, that's right.
Fred?
Yeah, if I might, I haven't heard anything new here, other than the reprimand part. But otherwise, you're talking federal law, state law, Robert's rules, you've rolled everything into
And
one.
the Town Administrator Act.
I think you just summed it all up.
Puts it in one place so it's obvious to us all.
And also, if the board needed time to chew on it, I mean, one you could move to table too.
No, I move to
I've read it.
adopt the policy.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And again, I want to improve communication and bring us together. And this is a commitment to each other up here, us to you, and hopefully back the other way.
And then this also sets expectations too, of what is expected of what is important.
Jen?
On the chance, my understanding is the very outside chance that what Ms. Noyes is saying does occur, and somebody feels like they've been unfairly ejected from a public meeting, what is the recourse there?
Basically, the recourse is when they regain their personal control, they're welcome to come back in.
Right, but if they feel like it's been they've been unnecessarily ejected?
Well, they could feel free to voice that opinion at the
Take it
next
to
Board of
court?
Selectmen meeting.
Yeah, court,
Right,
yeah.
or you can take it to court or call the police. That's,
We've
what it
always,
boils down to.
Jen, we've always had that.
All boards and committees do.
So
Right,
my,
Doug?
my goal isn't to marginalize anyone or even to kick somebody out of a meeting permanently. It's more like a possible timeout
Timeout.
scenario. And when you're good, you can come on back in.
And I mean, most of the time, police are here anyway at our meetings.
So, all right, thank you for the affirmative vote on the Code of Ethics policy.
Take it now.
The statement for agenda. And- Right, can somebody pull that out, because here again, I was here.
It's the next page.
Thank you. I'm working, I got 3 partial agendas with notes, so I got lost here for hours longer than I thought earlier, so again, thank you.
No thanks.
All right, now this is consideration of adding the following a similar statement to the end of Board of Selectmen agenda. The Board of Selectmen pledges its respect to the public and each other. The board asks that the public conduct themselves in a respectful, courteous manner, both with the board and with fellow members of the public. Should any member of the board or any member of the public fail to observe this charge at any time, the chair will ask the offending person to leave the meeting until that individual regains personal control. Should decorum fail to be restored, the chair will recess the meeting until a genuine commitment to this charge is observed. Here again, more of the same, but that just puts kind of the gist of it at the end of each one of our agendas, so people know what to expect and how to conduct themselves when they come.
So that would be essentially at the end of
Yeah, like
this, it would say those.
Similar to the disclaimer of these are the things we anticipate, there might be something else, blah, 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 blah. it would be added on to
It kinda
that blurb, just to take the spirit of that commitment we just made forward and putting it at the end of every agenda,
And
so.
it kind of puts it there that no one can say, well, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so motion
So
to add this to our agendas going forward.
Second.
Which one? This one.
That one.
Alright. A lot of stationery.
No, no, a lot of paper.
You know, while we're talking about adding things to our meetings, I noticed when we were at the Triton, when we went around to the different communities, in Salisbury, they read, the Board of Selectmen reads a statement before every meeting,
Every time.
that says the meeting is being held in accordance, it's being recorded and broadcast on video, and is being held in accordance with the open meeting law.
If you wanted to dig into what exactly that statement is, I mean, we could have town council look
Yeah,
at it, we
okay.
could open the meetings or something like that too.
Yeah, I think, it's duly posted and it's held in accordance with all of the open meeting law. I think, I meant to bring that up before, and this just reminded me of it. Okay, I'll ask.
Okay, moving on.
We have to,
Oh,
we just
sorry.
opened it up for discussion.
Yeah, is there a motion?
I made the motion.
Was there a, okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Discussion, Morgan Ave Park.
Jim, do you want me to recuse on this one?
What's that?
You want me to recuse myself on this one?
Did you before?
I did because I wasn't thinking properly. Like I said, I brought it to the table.
Right.
Okay, so if you want me to recuse, I will. It's up to you.
Out of, what's the thought of the,
I think if you stand to
The board.
personally gain from it, I think you should recuse
I
yourself.
don't, all I said, I'm just trying to, I'll recuse myself.
I
on that.
think you should.
Okay, can I sit in the audience?
Yeah.
okay, so, there was a question of removing the no parking signs across from the fire station.
I brought up the concern that with the construction going on, I was concerned that Morgan Ave might be tighter than normal. And 2 of the 3 emergency response elements in our town are on that. And I wanted to hear from the chiefs, whether or not they thought it was okay to be parking on the road during construction or not. And so the chiefs are here and would like to say anything about it.
Yeah, I remember why the signs were posted way back when the fire hall was a private entity and they would host wrestling events. And the street would just get so congested with cars parked up and down each side for these things that the residents came before the Board of Selectmen and asked for there to be posted no parking, which made perfect sense. Now the building is under town control, there are no events like that that clog the street. So as far as the police department goes, if those signs were removed, I'd have no issue, and we treat Morgan Ave like any other side street. If a car was parked out of obstructed traffic, we'd ask it to be moved. If it wasn't moved, we'd take it and tow it, just like any other side street. So it's not directly in front of my facility, so it doesn't really affect me. I know the fire department probably has a different view, but as far as if the board decided to remove those signs, the purpose for those signs is no longer valid. But if they decided to remove those signs, we treat it like any other side street. You know, if there's a traffic obstruction, we'd ask the owner of the car to move it. You know, 99.9% of the time, people are cooperative and will move the car. And, you know, during construction of the new facility, we'll make room for cars. I mean, if they have to throw it down beside where the police department parks and things like that, we'll make do. So, I have no objection to it.
Thank you.
As far as the fire department goes, I have no problem with us getting out of the station, I'm not worried about that. The butchery is across the street, and, you know, they can't park there anyway. My only concern, and, you know, take it for what it is getting up Morgan Avenue. We measured it a few days ago, and again today. Apparatus, since the signs went up, are a lot bigger now. You know, signs went up a few years ago. New ladder truck's gonna be almost 10 feet wide with mirrors. The problem is you can't park like up on the lawn, or there's a ledge on the other side, or a drop off. So I'm a little concerned with if they were parked on the street, us getting up. You know, I think we could, it would just be real tight. I just wanted you to be aware of it. I'm not really for or against it. I don't have a strong feeling either way. But just be aware that it could be an issue. I have a commitment from the police chief that if we look out the window and see a bunch of cars for a party and I'm concerned about it, that he'll assist us in moving the cars. Nobody's after the midnight there, so I have the guys and girls take a look at it and go from there. You know. So just just concerned that if the parking in the street, it may be an issue getting that truck up there.
Okay.
Getting out of the station, I'm not worried about it at all.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. Yes. Okay, questions, comments from the board?
I guess I'm still concerned about the parking. I don't wanna take away the signs and then have, have one of those unfortunate situations where the perfect storm happens, there's a party going on, no one called in fast enough, and then the fire response is delayed because we allowed the parking to go on there. So I'm still concerned about it. I'm still concerned.
The only difference would be, why is Morgan Ave any different than any other street that could have cars parked in it and the truck couldn't get down it?
Yeah, it's not, that's no difference, no. Graham have a similar,
I mean,
you know.
to me, it was put there for the reason that the wrestling matches totally clogged up everything, and that's what they were there for, so if the need's not there, like Mike said, our chief said, it should be treated like any other street, and if you are blocking the public way for the fire engine, then you gotta move the car.
Yeah, so if, God forbid, there was a fire and you had to get out and get up Morgan Ave, and the cars are in the way, what would they do? Would they plow through them?
No.
Those things get drawn. That's an expensive battery.
I'm real glad you didn't ask me that. Damn it, Jordan, you know, he's students. That's why I'm not a firefighter.
Run them right over.
I'm glad people street would go around the Graham
Stay
Ave.
in the driveway.
We'd find another street, we'd go around the Graham Ave, get out that way. We plot the
Which could happen if any of the streets down, especially in that congested area, had a car parked there.
Yeah, I mean, the reason it's just one of the ways out. If it was, it happened, like Jess said, it can happen on any street. So it's clearly not a big deal, just.
Yeah, especially on the island.
Yeah, it happens I'm sure it happens on the island all the time.
Well, it would be just our luck if we really kept the signs there, the fire engine's gonna go around the corner and they're all blocked up there. So, it's like
You know
putting a
what? You know
catalytic
what?
converter on a
This is-
motorcycle, you're
well,
taking the sound away.
This is what can happen.
Right, Mike?
If we decide to remove the signs, and an incident occurs, and the truck can't get up the street,
Or it looks like one might.
we can always revisit it and then just post them in an area that it's not affected. We
I mean, if you
only
like, we
use
can keep an
traffic.
eye on it and see how it looks, for a while and let you know.
See how it goes.
Yep.
Yeah, so.
I mean, it's not permanent.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that we could do is just wait till the police are in the new station. Construction is the one that really concerns me, because lots of trucks come in, sometimes they can't fit on the site,
And
they have to wait,
Right, and have to lay down
other
material.
people are already parking on the street. It can just get messy, and that's sort of my big concern. So I guess I would advocate waiting till after construction and then taking down the signs, but I'm okay with taking them down. If everyone else is more comfortable than I am with this, then let's just take them down now.
See, what's hard for me to visualize is, you could just go around the corner, let's say, I forget, is it Graham Ave, Michael?
Yeah, very bad.
I mean, if people are parked on both sides of Graham Ave, at the same time, Doug would have the same problem with the fire engine, so.
During construction, if trucks are bringing in materials to lay down and stuff, if there was like a temporary no parking order at certain times to allow things to happen, do you think the neighbors would be amenable to that?
Yeah, I think it's like I said, I think they're not gonna work on weekends, this is mainly a weekend thing.
Yeah.
People have people over on weekends, and a lot of what we use that parking lot now, that parking lot's not gonna be used anymore, because they're gonna be working on it.
Right.
So it's like I said, we have to have, if you have people over, you gotta have a place to park.
Right.
That's all we're looking at.
So yeah, I mean, maybe during the week, if the need arises, we could post a temporary no parking.
Yeah, I mean, what is the process for temporary no parking right now, Mike?
Determine it's a public safety hazard and we put up temporary no parking signs. And then,
So yeah, I think if we can do temporary no parking to make sure,
Just at times during construction, if things are getting
If
crazy.
needed, if needed.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll tell you, I drive some of those roads, I'll go visit someone on those roads, and, I mean, if you're really parking up and down the street all the time on those roads, you know, you got a chance your car's gonna get whacked anyway.
Mhm.
You know, you're not gonna park there in the snowplow time, I mean, it's tight.
I was walking Ross Lane a couple of years ago, they had a yard sale on the corner.
Yeah.
And some guy came down, took out 3 mirrors,
I mean,
just
it's
kept driving.
tight, it's just tight, it's the way it is. That's part of town.
All right, so does someone wanna sum this up in a motion? You're so good at that, Damon.
I move that we remove the no parking signs on Morgan Ave and authorize the chief to use temporary no parking when necessary for the construction project.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Now for the hot topic everyone's been waiting for, location of Plum Island porta potties. Because believe it or not, in this office, it can be a hot topic. So, Pete, I'll kick off the conversation. I've been around about 4.5 years, and when I got in, a lot was made of dog waste and bags on the beach, which drives me nuts. I'm not even gonna go down that road. We seem to get that situation under control with the duty calls. Things aren't perfect, but it's helped. One thing we've had a few people weigh in on over the years are the location of the porta potties. And much to my chagrin, no matter where you put those stinkers,
They are stinkers.
somebody doesn't like the positioning of them. Now, since they've been moved to the current location, has anybody heard?
They've been moved, I think, because they were going across because you couldn't see the ocean. And
In
now-
that picture, they're up to the left
Right,
still,
now they're going
correct?
down, now they're going down straight though, they're going this way instead of this way.
Right,
So now two cars can now drive up. The issue was, it was thrown at me was, disabled people couldn't see the ocean from their cars.
If they got moved, it's probably the guy doing the, porta potties decided to put them in a different place.
right, and honestly,
They're in a
that,
straight line now, cause I sent the picture to, I sent Ocean
Yeah.
a picture, and I sent Tracy a picture, like, they're in a straight line now, so 2 cars can come up now, no problem.
So the guy was listening.
He was listening, he listened, and so he moved it.
and one thing that got things kind of stirred up this year is when the Johns initially got dropped off, the driver didn't know any better and he didn't put them in the normal spot. So of course that immediately, right, so that was quickly rectified, but this is one of those things, I can't make heads or tails over what the best spot is. Where they are right now looks perfectly
Yeah.
fine to me, but not, why not?
No, but I think it is good now, because
Let's make a motion that we leave them where they are this year for at least the remainder of this year, because hopefully we'll have bathrooms.
Yeah, so I think the important thing is to note that the governor's budget came out, there's 40 grand in it for renovations. I think we wanna,
But there's still, the governor has the chance to veto those
Yes,
things,
I
and then
mean,
they get, so we're
there's-
hoping it's in there.
but I think what's important is to take any state funds we have and at the next town meeting, get funding for that project on the agenda.
Up and going,
Because
up and going.
I don't think we wanna wait till the state coughs over all the money we need. I think, I would like to not have porta potties next year. And I think
Well, when I went and looked at them, the spot where they are now, so when you come into the parking lot, there's a handicap spot to the left, up as close to the beach as can be, that spot there. So if you're a handicapped person and you pull into that spot, you're parking head on, looking at the building in front of you. If you look to the right, there's a dune there. So you can't really see the water anyway.
You can pull up, you can see the water. I don't know my car up there, you can pull up to see the water.
In that spot?
Yeah, I know, the 2 spots, because
No,
I
you're
looked.
not, you're right, I'm not there yet though.
Okay.
So in this spot here,
Oh, no, the handicap spot you can't.
the
No.
handicap
Oh, right,
spot, that's where you're here, so
but
the
that's-
cars here, if you look
right,
this way, there's the dune.
That's a parking spot though.
Right, and then there's the 5 portable potties here.
Yeah.
When you pull straight up dead ahead, like he's saying, if you pull straight up ahead, first of all, that's a no parking spot. So, I mean, it's really just for people to pull up,
Take a look.
unload your stuff. And then if you wanna look at you can see you have the ocean in front of you and you can see to the right, but when you see to the left, you really can't because there's those porta potties.
Porta potties, right?
And so, but that's not a legitimate parking spot anyway.
Right.
So if you just wanna come up and take a
That's-
look,
That's all it was,
it's not,
Right.
you know, it's,
I mean, people, when storms come, people drive up to see the waves and then they turn
right,
around and go.
then they turn around and they leave, and you really can't leave your car because it's not a parking
right.
spot.
It's not a parking
There
spot.
is a problem with toilet paper on the beach, and that's just gross. So that needs to be, you know, if we keep them up on that part of the beach, you're gonna have stuff leaving the
And that-
bathroom.
Unfortunately, that kind of goes hand in hand with
Porta
porta
potties.
potties.
So
So
I
again,
was looking-
like Damon was saying, the quicker we can move away.
So I was looking across from the porta potties where the DPW built that wall that's really nice, and we have those picnic benches. The parking lot comes up to like here, and then we have 2 picnic benches, the wall's here, right, and here's the parking lot. My thought is next year, if we have to have porta potties, don't put them up here on the beach at all to allow the toilet paper to go out. Put them on this side, closest to this first parking space here, and then we can put the picnic benches up closer to the water, then you can see the water, and I think it would be great. If we can do it now, I think it's good.
Yeah, you can do it now.
Is that by days?
And you can back the porta potties up to each other, so it'll be 3 and 3 backed up to each other on a block.
Well, then you
They look even
might
less-
block view though that way.
No,
You'd have to
even
measure
less obnoxious.
than having a straight line against that wall.
Before we take any action like that, I would wanna go down there and look at it again and talk to James about if there's a reason we can't have the benches up the top, and, cause I mean, they designed that whole area, I wouldn't wanna shift it without talking to James.
Yeah,
So,
but I think I think they're fine where they are now for the rest of the year. I don't like the fact that the toilet paper comes out, but if we move them, the toilet paper's still gonna come out, but it won't be blowing around on the beach.
You're killing me.
It's gross.
We've been having some fun ideas.
And you know
More.
something?
But I'm not wrong.
Alicia, in a perfect world, we'll stop that from occurring in the Merrimack River too.
Right,
I think everyone builds themselves a luxurious nest and then the door opens and it just.
yeah. I have no.
alright, I move that we table this discussion.
Oh, come on, I just started having fun. All right, so should we stick with what we have
I
for the
like,
summer?
I
or
like
should
that.
we-
But I think, unless we wanna move the tables, I
Well, I think we
Well, I think it's just moving the tables, shifting them, it's not really
That's okay.
moving them, it's just putting them up a couple of spots,
Okay.
but
I have
they're
no
still
problem with that
there.
either.
Why don't didn't I make a motion though, just to keep everything where it was?
Right,
Yeah.
that's why I'm trying to,
Let's get it
I
going.
think for this year, I agree with that.
Alright, okay,
okay,
I'll second your motion, long after it was due.
any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Hallelujah.
Did you say that?
I'll tell Lynn.
We had correspondence, we had an email from Jonathan Higgins regarding his excellent work removing the algae and excess nutrients from our upper and lower green ponds.
Now, can we stop for a second on this one? Is the Upper Green Committee, that's not gonna affect him, is it?
Well, we've already given him the clearance to do it, I think 2 years ago now, right?
Yeah,
more
it's
than
been a
that,
while, I just don't want him to stop what he's doing.
No,
No, he's doing a good job.
you should be left alone.
Yeah,
That's my opinion.
thank you.
For anybody who might,
I was gonna ask John
Bye, Mike.
if the duckweed is root beer that's going out, because that's a really, that's a very important plant for our waterfowl community. So I'll have to ask, be curious.
Okay,
10 o'clock.
we received correspondence from, we received correspondence from Whittier Regional Vocational Technical High School regarding their 2019-2020 gross budget. Can anyone put their finger on what their assessment is? It's massive paper.
441,262.
All right, and that is to Whittier.
Yeah, you got the letter from that side.
The Xfinity is increasing coverage.
Read it off, since you got it pulled up.
This is a letter from Xfinity to the Board of Selectmen. We are committed to keeping you updated about actions that may affect our customers. To that end, as a courtesy in the event you receive questions, we are letting you know that as of June 25th, 2019, Xfinity On Demand will no longer be available on TiVo devices. In close consultation with TiVo, we made the decision to remove Xfinity On Demand app from TiVo devices because the platform that permits those entitlements utilizes outdated technology that can no longer be updated and is therefore susceptible to security breaches. Both Xfinity and TiVo have notified affected customers of this equipment issue. And you can contact them if you have any questions at 508-884-2326. Just another cut from Comcast.
Okay, we received a letter from David L. Shepherd, 14 Pine Street, Newburyport, regarding a land parcel he owns at 45 Parker Street, Newbury. And I figured I'd just read this out loud for everybody. Dear Administrator and Selectman, a brief history. I purchased a 3.6 acre parcel from the proprietors of Oak Hill Cemetery on or about June 6, 2006. The 3.6 acre parcel is divided between Newbury and Newburyport. There are 2.2 acres of wetland in Newbury and 1.4 acres of partial wetland in Newburyport. For 1.4 acres of land in Newburyport, we can only use 0.7 acres or 30,492 square feet. The remaining 0.7 acre is wetland. I do have a problem with the Newbury parcel of land. It is 2.2 acres of pure wetland, and according to the Conservation Commission, it can never be disturbed in any way, shape, or fashion. My problem is the $503 I pay to the town of, in 4 cents that I pay to the town of Newbury per year for property taxes. Please keep in mind that I can never use this land for anything, ever. And I really resent the fact that I must pay taxes and receive absolutely nothing in return. So I have a proposal. I would like Newbury resident parking permits for 3 of my vehicles, and I would really appreciate having the parking permits at no charge. I seriously doubt that we would use the Newbury parking facilities very often, and at least I would be receiving something for the amount of taxes being paid. There is an alternative. I have investigated the possibility of gifting the land to an organization like Mass Audubon and back to Oak Hill. Gifting the land is doable without any hassle, but if the land is gifted away, Newbury would lose the tax revenue. When Oak Hill owned the land in Newbury, they paid no taxes. Can we work something out regarding my proposal? Please let me know, Dave Shepherd. I know Dave Shepherd a little bit. He's a really nice guy. I'm not sure if I agree with this point of view.
I think there's some tongue in cheek there.
Yeah, but when you own property, wet or not, you own property.
Yeah.
I talked to him today. He's almost convinced he can give it away.
Yeah.
I think it's Mass Audubon's gonna take it, somebody.
Right, if you buy property, you
Right.
think you can develop it or it's gonna be useful and it isn't,
Right.
that's.
But he said.
I mean, one of the things, I'm a Newbury resident and I have to pay for my parking permit anyway.
Mhm.
But I think at some point, there might be some validity to, especially for some of the folks that own marshland, you know, and outer islands and stuff in the town of Newbury, and they might not be a resident of the town of Newbury, but it might be something to think about, you know, them being able to, if they're paying taxes on a piece of land, be able to utilize a boat ramp to get out to their piece of property. And I don't know if that's ever been thought of.
Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of duck hunters, I mean, in the winter, it's not as huge an issue, but there's, you can own accessible marshland and pay taxes on it, but not even be able to get to it.
Right.
I think that also, it does tie back to the parking question, which we talked about a little bit at the last meeting.
Yeah,
Is,
Damon alluded to that before.
you know,
And so maybe we should think about how, I don't know how that would go, it's the fact that if you own land in Newbury, you still have to pay for your parking ticket, but, I mean, permit for one car, but.
both.
Yeah, and your ticket, but it might be worth, at least, even though you're not a resident, being able to use a Newbury ramp to get out to your.
Your landlocked piece of land.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think if we had a parking discussion, we could, you know, cause maybe it's resident stickers cost 50, and if you're a non-resident property owner, they cost 100.
Yeah, it could be, yeah.
I mean, but I
that
think
makes sense.
that's not a discussion I wanna start at 5 minutes to 10 tonight.
Sounds good to me.
But I think it is a discussion we should have.
All right, we have A letter from Rachel McManus, resignation from the planning board. Dear Mr. Colby, this email is to advise the Board of Selectmen that I am moving out of state and will no longer be available to serve on the Newbury Planning Board. New planning board officers were elected at the July 17th meeting, which resulted in Mr. Peter Pecos being elected chair, Larry Murphy being elected vice chair, and Leslie Matthews being elected clerk. The planning board is in good hands. My resignation is effective July 30th, 2019. I wish to thank the selectmen for their support and guidance. The Board of Selectmen is doing a great job, and I appreciated having the opportunity to work with you and to serve the town. I wish you and the town the best. Respectfully, Rachel McManus. Rachel McManus, very approachable, nice woman, has done a nice job as chair after John Weiss's departure to go live with family in another part of the country. And we should certainly write a letter of thanks to Rachel. I also want to thank the other members of planning board, and I want to thank Leslie Matthews, because as things have developed, we needed that extra body on planning board, and I'm grateful and thankful that you're there.
Thank you. What does this do for the other thing?
Do we have to
What's
appoint,
this?
do we have to appoint somebody now?
Not yet, I don't think.
No.
We need to wait for,
No, what? Okay.
need to find some people to drop them in the flies over there.
So how many is your board now?
It's
Three.
four.
So should we,
We have a motion.
Yeah, I move to sign to write a letter to Rachel McManus thanking her for her service to the town.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Rachel.
So what do we wanna do about appointing another?
Well, we need,
We need to get some recommendations.
Yeah, and she's still here right now, right?
Yeah, her resignation's effective July 30th.
Yeah.
A few more days.
okay.
So yeah, just before you adjourn, I just think it kinda cool. Jan gave me this today, and I think people should just see it because it's kinda hot, and you can see it from out there. But that's the Plum Island Bridge. That was the original Plum Island Bridge, guys. So whenever you talk about a colossal tidal restriction, you know, it's probably what, 70 feet down there now, Doug?
If that.
And this is at least, if you, just for kicks, pull out, when you get down to Plum Island, and you pull out to the right, and you have that place where there's a cement abutment and it ends there, and you look like 600 feet across, that's where this bridge used to go to.
Yeah.
So in all our wisdom in 1970, we restricted our Great Marsh with,
They used engineering to overcome the force of
oh man,
the water.
yeah, unbelievable.
Back then, you could see they were wise enough to just let it go.
Yeah.
Not gonna fight it.
Yeah, it's funny that pictures like that, and I remember when my grandfather was around, all the stories he told me about dancing at the pavilion, and
Oh,
going down there, and funny things, and run-ins, and fist fights, and
well, you could get down to Grape Island by boat from the landing,
yeah,
so.
but pretty neat. Some I wish I was able to see. So upon that, do we have meeting minutes to approve? Okay, is there a motion?
Motion to approve June 25th, 2019 meetings.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Do we have warrants?
Yes.
Motion to sign warrants.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we have no executive session tonight. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Can I do a legal update first?
Absolutely.
There have been a few issues at the driving range with silt coming off site, so I just wanted the other members to know that. We're taking steps to address it, but I wanted everyone to be aware that some issues have gone on. So, that's all.
I went to the Massachusetts Municipal Association's Women Elected Municipal Officials and Leadership Conference at Wellesley College on Saturday. And one of the things that they talked about was social media and how towns can get the word out, again, with more communication. And one very interesting thing that I heard somebody say is that, and I forget what town she was from, they put their meetings, these meetings, in addition to broadcasting them out on cable, they put them on Facebook Live. So they'll Facebook Live all the public meetings, and she said that gets a lot more people coming out, and I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah.
I did get the name of a company that would help us with our social media. They're out of Portsmouth, New Hampshire. They have her card, I'll leave it with Tracy. They'll run our Facebook page, like the town Facebook page, You do have the ability to just put information out, you don't have to take comments in. A lot of towns block that ability.
Why?
Oh, gee, I wonder. And Ellen, when we post the agenda, this is a question, when we post the agenda, do we post the whole packet? We do, right?
No.
Oh, we don't.
No, because it's not public until it's given to you.
Okay, one other thing that I got was that they put the entire, one town puts the entire packet online before.
It can be done after, but it's not public record until you get it.
Well, they do it before, so. I don't know. That's what it was said.
Town administrator.
But town council too. And that's it. That's what I took away from that.
Call the rock.
Mr. Chairman, can I?
Yes.
Sorry, I won't hold you up at all, I'm sorry. This is supposed to come up in the town administrator's report, but it didn't. Can I just give you just a brief update on the apparatus, because I just want you to,
Sure.
aware of. The ladder truck's coming along nicely, it's on schedule, it's nearing completion. We're going to Pennsylvania, I think the week of August 12th, for a couple days to do the inspection. It should be coming in September. So as I've seen pictures, it's beautiful, it's really nice. There's been a couple of questions I've received, and I want to give you some information in case you receive them, on the height of the ladder truck again, some concerns on the height of the ladder truck. The ladder truck is 11 feet 3 inches.
So it will fit.
It will fit, it's been engineered to fit, nobody else. And I held the contract up for 2 months, until I get it in there, but it's on the onus of the manufacturer and the dealer. If it doesn't fit, they have to retrofit the truck or retrofit the station.
Very wise.
So that'll be fine, so that'll be all right, but there's some bridge concerns too, and the only bridge we have that I was worried about was the footbridge, in the Governor's Academy, on over Elm Street. So the truck is 11.3, but bridge is 13.6.
So you should be good.
We're fine with that, we're fine with that. So that's coming along, we're going to do the inspection, and all should be fine with that. The engine is not so a happy story. Somehow 90 engines got in front of our engine.
To be manufactured?
Yeah.
Yeah, it tells you the economies of
90 engines, yeah. I don't have a good answer for you yet, in all honesty, I just want to look for the day. I will get an answer, I'll go to Pennsylvania, because I already called them, so I expect the explanation by the time I get down there. The good news is it only takes 2 months to build an engine. So they're thinking November before we see the engine, which isn't terrible. Just puts our space in the park, that's all.
Right.
So, but I'll come back with the answer next meeting, I'll keep you updated on why that happened.
Okay.
So,
Thanks, Chief.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
All those in favor?